Thank you so much for coming out to Rails for this today. I'm Rebecca Vanook, the editor for Reference and Collection Management at Booklist Magazine. And before I introduce our panel, I wanted to give a really big thank you to Rails for their generous use of their space today, as well as the fabulous tech support that has been very good to us this morning and offering us the live streaming option and the recording for afterwards. So thank you so much for that. And also a huge thank you to the Rowman and Littlefield Publishing Group for suggesting and sponsoring this program. Rowman and Littlefield, this is part of their, Jennifer will talk a little bit about her book, this is part of their new line of professional development books for librarians. So they have generously sponsored this program to kind of tell you, let you know that that exists. It's an excellent line and it's aimed at librarians and teachers at all levels and all types of libraries. So Elaine Schleifer is here from Rowman and Littlefield, and if you want to talk to her a little bit about that afterwards, I'm sure she's happy to chat. So on to the program. It is my pleasure to introduce our fantastic speakers today. I could not be more pleased with the quality and caliber of these three librarians. And I'm really excited that you can all be with us here today, both in person and streaming, to learn from the experts. Each of them is a nationally known writer and presenter on a variety of library and readers advisory topics, so I feel very, very lucky that we've landed them today. Jennifer Broman-Bender is the librarian at Lincoln Way West High School in New Lenox, and she started her library career at the Prairie Trails Public Library in Burbank, Illinois, as head of youth services. She has written 5 books on book talking and story times for children and numerous articles for School Library Journal and Library Media Connection. And we're hoping to steal her for Booklist. She doesn't know that yet. her most recent title is Book Talking Nonfiction, 200 Surefire Winners for Middle and High School Readers, published by Rowman and Littlefield. She is a past secretary of ISLAMA and is currently on the programming committee for this year's conference. Jennifer is also currently pursuing a doctorate in literacy at Northern Illinois University, so she's not busy at all. This is just, fun time. Becky Spratford has been a reader's advisor for over 14 years at the Berwyn, Illinois Public Library. She is taught at the graduate level and trains librarians all over the world. Becky runs 2 popular and critically acclaimed blogs, RA for All and RA for All Horror, and is also an author of RA books, most recently, the Reader's Advisory Guide to Horror for ALA Editions. She also contributes content for EBSCO's Novelist Database. Becky works on the steering committee of the Adult Reading Roundtable here in Illinois, and is a proud member of the Horror Writers Association. Then we have Katie Mediator-Stover. She's the Director of Reader Services for the Kansas City Public Library. She's the co-editor of the Reader's Advisory Handbook for ALA Editions and has contributed chapters to the book's Research-Based Reader's Advisory and Integrated Advisory Service. Currently, Katie writes the He Reads, She Reads column for Booklist with David Wright and the Under the Radar column for Public Libraries Magazine with Jessica Moyer. She's a regular blogger for Booklist's book group Buzz blog and reviews fiction, audiobooks, and professional reading for us. She's also the recipient of the 2012 Allie Beth Martin Award and was named a Library Journal Mover and Shaker in 2003. So each speaker has prepared remarks for today, but we'd also like this session to be collaborative and give you all an opportunity to share and to learn and give us your tips and tricks, ask them all kinds of questions. So we want this to kind of be an informal, conversational sort of program. I do invite our live streamers to ask questions or make comments via the chat option. I will be monitoring that during the session. And for those of you here, we will give you time after each speaker to ask them specific questions regarding their program, and then at the end we have lots of time to talk to the 3 of them and just kind of have a conversation about book talk. So, that's all you need to hear from me. Jennifer, take it away.
Okay, great, thanks. And I decided to focus on nonfiction today since it's a big part of the Common Core, and that's the topic of my last book. I kind of have a bit of a variety of books I'm going to share with you, as well as some other information on book talking. And I selected books, some because I just had good book talks for them, some because the kids like them, and I tried to add variety for middle school, high school, and adult type books. So before I get into the books, did I press the wrong button? There we go. All right. I wanted to just mention some other ways that people are doing alternatives to book talks. And should I be standing up? Is it easier if I stand
No, you
up,
can
or-
sit. You can sit whatever you want.
There are a lot of librarians who don't get a chance to read a lot of books. They have a busy time in their lives, and they can't read all these new books to share. So these are just some different ideas for that. I know one librarian in our district copied the idea of speed dating that was written about in, I think, Library Media Connection and shared in other places. That's kind of the speed dating concept of moving from table to table with different books that students get to view. And that's kind of the museum concept a bit below. Without the speed dating, they get to more browse the books that you have displayed, maybe on different topics around the library as more of like a museum type setting. But to browse their own, yet you've selected the books that they get to choose from. In a minute, I'm going to talk more about the book match. And Book Blasts was an idea by Beverly Fred. I saw a presentation at a conference with her, and they do more of just the librarian and teachers bring their students for the book talks, and they just blindly read the backs of the jackets of the books, and they try to do it in an enthusiastic way. So books that you didn't get a chance to read, you still wanted to share, that was one idea for that. And a lot of people are also, I'm sure you've heard of the book trailers, of taking those book trailers from YouTube or such. So those are just different ways that people are creating and presenting book talks if they're not comfortable with book talking or if they don't get a chance to read a lot of books. So one thing I started last year was the book match. And it kind of stole the concept of like the Match.com dating thing, where if students filled out this survey that I had up there and wrote all their interests and things about them, I was going to match them personally with a list of books. And then each of them got this little card, and this they could take home over the summer with reading suggestions. So I used Novelist and my personal knowledge of books and Amazon or card catalog to come up with different suggestions for them. And it was certainly harder than I thought. And you could shorten this a bit if you only wanted to focus on one thing. I decided to look at every piece of what they were interested in, finding the perfect horror tennis love story, things like that. In some cases it worked. Some I gave a few suggestions, some and more. And I put disclaimers on the back because obviously I couldn't read all of these books, so I wasn't positive about the content of each of those. So I found the best questions were things that were more open-ended. Like my favorite one was number 7. If the perfect book existed, what would the book be about? And sometimes they wrote things where the perfect book did exist for them, so I was able to suggest that. So I wrote an article about this also that's going to be in Library Media Connection in January if you didn't catch all that I said. All right. So that's just the survey, but you already have that. And when I present book talks, I like to have it more about the hook or the attention getter. I find when I just talk mostly about plot and summaries, I lose the interest of some of the students who don't care about books or they only like a certain type of book. But when I grab their attention with something else, I've hooked them for a while. They're listening to that book talk, and then they may daydream for a little while before I start the next one. But at least I've hooked them for the beginning of those. So I like to do a lot of personal stories of my own or things that the students can relate to, stories that have been in the news, certainly with nonfiction, a lot of facts, student stories that they can relate to, certainly a lot of questions too. I usually start my whole book talking session with some kind of question to grab their attention. And especially if the plot has something really shocking in it, that's something to start with also. And then a little bit of reading aloud. I don't do too much reading aloud because I tend to personally not be able to look up and down very much. So I know I'm losing their attention when I do that. So I don't do a lot of the reading aloud, but other people do. And I do pick pieces of the book sometimes for the reading aloud. So any questions on this before I move on with some of the books? Okay. So, I think I might need to stand up for this one. Now, how many of you, when you graduate from high school, or for those in the room, when you choose your second career, would like a job where you make $3.20 an hour? Good, because then you'd be a drug dealer. And that's what we find out in the book Freakonomics. And you probably have heard about this book, different economic issues that they discuss, and a lot of questions they try to answer. In that case, they want to know, why do drug dealers live with their moms? And there are other ones such as, let's see, what do school teachers and sumo wrestlers have in common? How's the Ku Klux Klan like a group of real estate agents? But the one I wanted to focus on was the drug dealers, because that was most interesting to me. Like, yeah, why do they live with their parents if they're supposed to make all this money? Well, it turns out that only a few of the people way at the top, just like in big corporations, are the only ones who make the $100,000 in such a year. When they break it down to all the little jobs, the guy on the street is only making about $3.20 an hour. And they figured that out partly from this book. Well, actually, they figured it out from his research before he wrote this book of Gang Leader for a Day, where this author was doing research for grad school and went into the project to interview some of these gang leaders. And at first, he thought he was going to be killed and taken hostage, but then he befriended one of the gang leaders, or actually some people say that maybe he made some of it up. But according to the book, he actually did befriend one of the gang leaders for years and got to know all about how their system worked. So actually recently a student took Freakonomics and then he brought it back and said, you know, this isn't going to work for my project. We need to focus on a character. So I was like, well, why don't you take then, if you like that topic, the gang leader for a day instead. Now, how many of you have a dog? All right, very good. Now, how many of you think your dog's pretty smart? How many of you, how many words do you think, for you who have smart dogs, how many words do you think they know? 100. 100? Okay, good. It's more than I think mine knows, but.
My dog is smart.
Oh, well, then you're probably pretty close to Chaser. Chaser knows over 1,000 words. And he was acquired by the author of this book, John Pilley, who adopted him. And he had had dogs before that he trained. He's a psychologist, so he often does a lot of research with these dogs. And one is that he believes that these animals can learn to not just associate a word with an object, but actually a combination of words, which was previously not thought that the dogs could do. So in the book, there's pictures about his pile of hundreds of toys. And you could say, find the yellow penguin. And he would associate yellow with penguin and know exactly which one to go with. So that is Chaser, one of the smartest dogs in the world. Now in Grayson, there is an Olympic swimmer, and she is out practicing in the ocean one day, and suddenly she starts to see people waving at her, and of course she kind of waves back, but then she gets closer to the shore and people are still waving at her, and when she gets even closer she could hear them and they're telling her to go back. She does not know why, but she soon hears that they tell her to turn around and there's this whale following her. So she thinks immediately, go back to shore. They keep showing her go back. And finally, when she could hear, she finds out that it's because this baby whale is following her. And if she makes it to the shore, the whale will continue to follow her, and it will die if it reaches the shore because its lungs will collapse on the earth. So she is told she has to keep swimming back out into the ocean so the whale can follow her until she reunites it with its parents. Now, how many of you think Pluto should still be a planet? Yeah. I know, it is very sad. I agree. But however, the scientists disagree. They got together, came up with the qualifications of what a planet actually is, and poor Pluto no longer fit. It had some of the same characteristics, like the moon and orbiting the sun, but a lot of it did not. And unfortunately, if we decided to keep Pluto as a planet, there would be hundreds of others of planet objects that would have to be considered planets too. So students would now have to memorize hundreds of planets in school. So, of course, you've probably seen the shows by Neil deGrasse Tyson and know that he is an expert on this. And he worked at the Natural History Museum in New York, and he was the first person to put up a display without Pluto. So, of course, he got hate mail from children. So I'm going to read you a couple of those. But I can't see very well. I think Pluto is a planet. It's, of course, to dear Mr. Tyson. Why do you think Pluto is no longer a planet? I do not like your answer. Pluto is my favorite planet. You are going to have to take all of the books
away and change them. Pluto is a planet. Your friend, Emerson. And then, dear scientists, what do you call Pluto if it's not a planet anymore? If you make it a planet again, all the science books will be right. Do people live on Pluto? If there are people who live there, they won't exist. Why can't Pluto be a planet? If it's small, does it mean that it doesn't have to be a planet anymore? Some people like Pluto. If it doesn't exist, then they don't have a favorite planet. Please write back, but not in cursive because I can't read cursive. Your friend, Madeline Trost. So, poor Pluto. So it, of course, has been demoted.
Great book.
Now, you all know, of course, the Sears, well, Willis Tower, but of course it's hard to say that. The Sears Tower and how tall that is. Like about 1,400 feet high, 200 levels. And it would take you 45 minutes to walk from the bottom to the top. Now imagine if the Sears Tower was underground and you were trapped at the very bottom. And even further than that is what the 33 miners in Chile in 2010 had to deal with. They were working in a mine that wasn't very well cared for, wasn't up to code, did not have a second escape route, did not have an up-to-date map, and when the rocks started collapsing and covering up the holes, they had nowhere to go. So they hid in the shelter beneath with only a few cans of tuna that they rationed off in little capfuls. Every 12 hours, the miners in there had one tiny little cap full of food. They were able to find some water, and they managed to stay there for about 69 days. And meanwhile, hundreds of people, and the book switches back and forth to both stories, hundreds of people came to try to rescue them from all over the world with different techniques. The problem is they had no idea where they were because the map wasn't up to date. So the people below could hear them drilling all over, knowing that they were trying to help, but knowing they were also not getting closer and the time was running out. So when you read Trapped, you'll find out, of course, if they all survived and what the solution was that finally got to reach them. Okay, now how do you pronounce the word K-N-I-G-H-T? Wrong. It is knicht, and that's how it originally started. And of course, the word snoop goes back in history to tell you all about how these words originated. And words have changed their pronunciation and spelling over time, mostly because it wasn't in print, and people who spoke different languages put their take in the spelling of it. So when the printing press finally came into existence, those printers, whatever country they were from, they added some of their word spellings into those. And then when they started printing things, when they got to the end of a line, they're like, oh, this word doesn't fit, we have to take out a letter. This word isn't justified, we have to add a letter. So that's how some of the words got changed. And then I think it was William the Conqueror, when he changed the official language in England to French, he decided to add like U's in the word color to make it more French. So he changed some of the words, and over time everything changed until the dictionary came to place. But by that time there were some common ways people spelled things, but that is a lot of the reasons why some of our words have silent letters in them and are difficult to learn. So that's just some of what you would learn about our language in the word snoop. Okay, now how old do you think the oldest person living today is?
105.
Close. And maybe you're right, because no one really knows. These people claim to be the oldest. The first one is a man from Brazil who is supposedly 127 years old, or 126. The woman below from China claims to beat him and be 127. However, she lost her birth certificate, so we don't know for sure. But why do they live so long? And how can we live to be that age? Well, you would find that out in the book, The Blue Zones. Because that goes, each chapter takes a different part of the world, including California, where people live to be the longest, and tells you what it takes to live the longest. Some of the things: drink goat's milk, walk 6 miles a day with bags on your back, have a loving family, love your work, which everyone in here does, a garden, eat a soy and plant-based diet, enjoy the sun, drink lots of water, and eat an early dinner as long as it's light. And that will help you live to an old age. All right, now today we get our gold from the jewelry store, but way back in the 1800s, people were searching for gold on their own. So it's easy for us today, or for some of us, of course, people are still mining. But this Call of the Klondike is mostly about two miners who were watching people come back with bags and bags of gold that were worth millions of dollars coming back from this expedition, and they decided to try it on their own by raising enough money to go, facing temperatures negative 60 degrees below zero, and trying to get up mountains that didn't have a trail. And in the end, you will find out if it was worth it, did they make any money out of this, and did they survive. Now, when this boy was 5 years old, he was already drinking wine. When he was 7, he was smoking cigars. And when he was 9, he was chewing tobacco. And that is Tom Thumb. And he, at the time, in the late 1800s, was the first famous little person. At that time, they called them dwarves. And people hadn't really seen people that small before. So P.T. Barnum decided to add him to the fattest woman and the skinniest man, and they tried to make him seem older than he was to call him a man, so that's why they had him smoking and drinking and such at a younger age. He never went to school. At the age of 5, he went straight into the circus and then became one of the most famous celebrities of that time. All right, now let's see, who's wearing jeans today? Okay, a few of you. In high school it would probably be most of them, and that is all due to Levi and Henry David Lee, who were the first to invent the jeans because people needed stronger work clothes. Their clothes were tearing, getting dirty at work, so they reinforced the seams. They added these strong, whatever they're called, rivets. And they made these jeans really tough. And people wore them to work for years, and then over time, other people decided to wear them casually, starting around the 1950s and stuff. And then suddenly teenagers wanted to wear them all the time, that they were even being banned in high schools in the 1960s. So wouldn't it be terrible if today a student showed up to school in loafers, jeans, and a button-down shirt like they did in the 60s? But the lowdown on denim takes you from the history of the development of the jeans to how they are used in movies and for Westerns and used today. All right, for this one, I'm going to just read a little bit. Let's see. Age 3, always hungry. Strange men come in and out of my apartment but never stay. A bad man steals everything, even the food out of our fridge. Mommy cries, so do Jerry and Sissy. Age 4, left with nuns in an orphanage. Mommy comes back for us. Age 5, my left arm is doused in lighter fluid by an older boy. He flicks the lighter, I'm on fire. I dip my arm in a creek, he laughs. We move to Vegas. Age 7, Mom marries Leroy Bracken. Leroy has kids too. I practice writing my new last name in my book. The older boy is now my stepbrother. Age 8, Mom has 3 jobs. She's gone all the time. She takes pills to help her stay awake, and on throughout his childhood. And that is Sam Bracken, who had to deal with all of this at a young age, even got involved with many of it himself, until one day he just decided he wasn't going to have that life. He wasn't going to do it anymore. He focused really hard in school, got A's, got a football scholarship to college, and even when he was injured, went on to finish his studies. So his book is called My Orange Duffel Bag, because when he left home, all his belongings could fit in just one orange duffel bag. And it's a quick read. It's written kind of like little entries for the different times in his life. In The Boy Who Came Back from Heaven, I'm sure you've read or heard of many stories about this. There are many out there of people who have died and said that they visited heaven before coming back to life. And in this one, the boy was on his way home from church with his father, and they got into a car accident. And the boy was trapped in the back, and the father was ejected from the front seat. Now, the boy was unconscious the whole time, eyes were not open, but when he eventually awoke after months in the hospital, he was able to describe everything that happened on that scene that day. He said he was able to describe what the EMT workers were wearing and looked like, and he said he saw angels lift his father out of the car and place him on the ground, and that's why the father walked away without a scratch. And in the hospital, when people had come to visit him, one day he was describing a moment when angels came to visit him, which was the same day a woman had come and painted a picture of him with angels above him. So he said that during his time in heaven, it looked just like earth, except more bright and brilliant. But there were also a lot of things that God told him he could not tell anybody, and a lot of things that he wasn't ready to be revealed yet. So whether you believe the story or not, it's fascinating to find out what this boy saw in The Boy Who Came Back from Heaven. And an American plague. On the first day, 13 people died. The second day, 14, third, 20. By day 5, 40 to 100 people were dying a day from the yellow fever epidemic. Bleeding, and this one was the one that I have trouble remembering the rest of my book talk for. So I'm just going to skip it because we probably don't have time anymore. But if you're interested, it is. And that's probably enough all you have to say, really, anyway. Actually, a lot of times I do find out that I have a really long book talk I think's great. No one ever checks it out. Next time I'm like, oh, this is about a girl in an abusive relationship. 10 kids, check it out. So sometimes shorter is better. All right, now most of you are probably happy kind of living in your home, and I don't know, maybe you would be a bit surprised if your parents decided one day you're going to sell the house and live on a boat. And that's what Jessica Watson's family decided to do. They went to school, they were homeschooled on this boat. They would stop in different places in Australia or around the world, and they did meet some other families along the way that they formed friendship with, but most of their time was spent on this boat. And that's why Jessica got the idea that she wanted to be the first teenage girl to sail solo across the world. And she contacted many people who have been doing these things and learned a lot about it. And she did make it all the way around the world. However, she went off path a little bit, so she didn't quite get that title. And some people say she wasn't quite unassisted because she used technology to communicate with others along the way. But she still went around the world in a boat on her own. So that is true spirit. And wow, I am making it through pretty fast. For this last one, any type of ghost story, I kind of start in the same way. Have any of you ever seen a ghost before? Yeah? No? Really?
I think so.
Even the horror, maybe, for you? I have seen several over my time, so that's why I'm a believer. Once was coming home from college and not having a bedroom anymore, and I was sleeping on the couch in my parents' house, and I woke up at night and saw a little girl in a robe with blonde curly hair walking up the stairs. And I know it was a ghost because I kept blinking my eyes, trying to make her go away, but she would not go away. So that's why I think it was real. And also, my house burned down a couple months later, and I've since read that ghosts can sometimes be a warning of that coming. Another time was in an apartment in Chicago, and the blanket fell off me at night. So, of course, I go to pick it back up, but it won't move. And it's not like it got stuck under something, which how could it anyway? It just fell off. Something was tugging it back. So I let them keep it and slept without the blanket the rest of the night. I have more stories, but I won't bore you with all of them. But in these stories are also people who have experienced ghostly things, such as in A Haunted Love Story, where they had to have this old house. And when one day the dad was talking to his son at the foot of the stairs, later he talks to his son about it, like, why does my son not remember this? Finds out he was in his room the whole time playing video games. They kept seeing doppelgangers of the family throughout the house. And I get the other ones confused a bit. In one, I think it was Sally House or Ghost of the McBride House, the children in the child's room. The child wasn't even old enough to get out of the bed by himself, but the toys would be arranged in circles on the floor when the parents came in. And in Holy Ghost, they would feel this electric charge when they went into the house. And they were even able to contact an expert on spirits who, without even visiting the house, knew that there was a secret door that had been since boarded up, but was there in the past, and was able to lead them to the people who were actually haunting that house. So those are some of the books I wanted to share today. Are there any questions?
Do you write your own book talks, Jennifer?
Yes.
And how long does it take to write one of those?
It usually comes pretty quickly. If I can't think of some hook or something right away, I usually just do a basic summary of it. So it usually just comes out pretty quickly. A lot of times when I'm reading it, you'll start to think of that hook that you're going to use right away.
Do you completely read every book you write a book talk about?
No. A lot of these I have because I wanted to make sure for this book I had read most of them. But a lot of times when I need new books or something, I do just read a chapter of it or skim through it or read the first part and then skim through the rest. And if I'm not sure of the content, especially with fiction, I'll make sure to tell the students that there might be some mature stuff, or I usually admit it to the students too. I haven't read this one yet, but I've heard it's great. This is what I know about it. So I try to be pretty honest with that.
Do you ever do book talks for books you don't like?
Yes, I do. and because I assume that, well, first of all, I've taken the time to read it, so I want to use it, but also because somebody published it, somebody liked it, there must be another audience, someone out there might read it too.
Just to get a feel for the room, how many of you actually do book talks in your job? That's a good portion of it. Did you have any actual formal training in book talking in library school that you remember? That's what when I was listening to Jennifer speak, I was thinking about this, that I certainly didn't. And the first time that I had really experienced sort of, this book talking was when I worked at the Chicago Public Library, and Cindy Welch, who is a name some of you probably know, she did these 90-minute book talks for all the branch heads to come and listen to, and I kind of got that same feeling as I was listening to Jennifer here, that I want to read all of these books now, right? Like that's the point of book talking, isn't it? It's not whether or not you have read it or whether you know it or whether you liked it. It's to be enthusiastic about this book and to really hook the reader in. So I hope that I was like frantically scribbling down stuff, and then I'm like, oh wait a minute, it's being recorded. I don't need to write any of this down. So hopefully you guys kind of got.
I did have a list, but I don't know if I got enough.
There is a handout. She does have handouts as well. So great. Any other questions for Jennifer?
How many students did you actually do this book match with?
Actually, I should have shown you.
Let's talk about that book match worksheet.
Here. It took it was probably about 200 for this time, and it was very, very time consuming. I am going to have to streamline it for the next time.
Did you open it to any student in the high school? Because that's a big high school.
Yes, we have 1,300 in our school after it broke up to 4. It's a little smaller than it used to be, but I gave it to all the English teachers and special education classes, and I really this time only had all the freshmen reading classes do it. But this year I've opened it up to any time throughout the year, so hopefully I'm not doing it all at the end, that maybe it will be split up a little bit more throughout the year. And I've asked for a little more time then to get it done too.
Jennifer, I have a question that's come in through the live chat asking if you have a recommended time per title that you like to spend. Do you limit yourself, or do you have it open-ended?
It's pretty open-ended, but I try to keep it short unless there's just so much that I want to share about a book. But I try to keep it really short so I can get through as many as possible. Sometimes I'll talk about like 60 in a class, and maybe some people think that's too many, but I want to make sure that they get as many possibilities as they can, because you only have so many copies of some of the books, and you want to make sure you reach the interests of the other students. But often a lot of them are like under a minute most of the time.
Under a minute, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, I think we'll go ahead and move on then to Katie. Katie's going to talk about adult book talks and talking in the stacks to people, and take it away.
And I'm going to do a little more nuts and bolts, because don't we all love what Jennifer just did?
Thank you.
And are any of you feeling, I could never do what Jennifer just did? I am. So I wanted to point out in my portion of this presentation that for all of you who said that you're already book talking in your schools or in your libraries, you're not just doing it there. You're doing it in far more places than you're aware of. So where does book talking happen? Well, yeah, it's happening in the school libraries, it's happening in schools, it's happening in our public libraries. And in our public libraries, it's happening most frequently at our circulation desk. It's happening in the stacks, usually with the folks who are shelving things. And, and sometimes it's happening among the patrons who mistake each other for working there, which I always find very entertaining. It happens over lunch. It happens over drinks. It happens over dinner, usually the Thanksgiving dinner table. It happens whenever 2 or more librarians are within shouting distance of each other. It's happening on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Goodreads, and it's in your staff lounge. We're talking about books all of the time. And I made a joke on Twitter that this program was, you know, about book talking and talking about books. They go together. Whenever we're talking about books with our colleagues, with our friends, with our family, we are doing a book talk. And so whenever you hear an author interview on the radio, or you see those reader comments on Amazon, even the ones from Mom, when you're watching book TV on C-SPAN, when you read a review in Booklist, or read the flap copy for a book, back of a paperback, all those annotations in the online catalog, all of that is a form of a book talk. And all of that is marvelous material that you can mine to create your own book talks. Jennifer's written a fantastic book that's going to show you how to do it, especially for middle and high school students with nonfiction. But there's lots of other material you can be pulling from in order to write and create your own book talks, even if it's just promoting something to somebody in your, in your immediate vicinity. In short, I mean, a nice definition, a book talk is any talk or text that you encounter that discusses what's readable, likable, enjoyable about a book. And I know Becky's got a far more formal definition of a book talk, and I'm going to let her give it to you later on. My short answer when I did take a class in book talking from someone back in the dinosaur days, is that a book talk is a sales pitch, and this teacher called it a book commercial, and I thought, oh, that's a cute word. I like that. So that's what it is. It's a sales pitch in order to get someone to read a book. It can be you pitching a book that you didn't like, but you know there's something sellable here. It can be a book that you loved and you want to pass on to someone. And actually, in my experience, those are the books that it's harder for me to sell. The ones that I absolutely loved, because I can't stop with, I just loved it, I just loved it. And we're going to talk about how you can get away from, I just loved it, it was so great. So book talks, they're multi-purpose. You can use them for so many different things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the grain of a book talk, which is the annotation. And whenever I say annotation in some of the workshops I give, that usually frightens people because they think they need to start writing things down, or they need to just think and examine and go through these books and figure out, well, what is it? Just pick it apart, find all the pieces. And yes, that is part of what you're doing, but you're looking at you're pulling out the best elements of what's in these books so that you can sell it to somebody else. Because you're going to use those annotations for other things besides book talks. You're going to use them in the reviews you might write or post on your library's website or contribute to your online catalog. You'll use them in a book list that you give to some students or that you put on the public library website for people to look at. A really cool, like for Banned Books Week this week, we're all promoting that. You'll use your annotations for that. You'll use them in tweets. If your library has a Twitter feed and you're promoting a book of the day, use them in blog posts. You're definitely going to use them in conversation. And do you have to write it down? Well, you get 2 tasks for the price of 1 at this workshop. Oh, wait. This is free, isn't it? All right, well, you can still get 2 for 1. So when you write down your annotations, there's so much more information there for you to use. But when we're talking, it's very easy to get carried away with just one tangent or just keep doing the, it's great, it's great. So there are different things you want to talk about when you do an annotation in print, and when you lift something from print to use orally in the stacks or at the circulation desk or even in conversation. So what we talk about when we talk about books, we talk about story or character. And when you're evaluating your book, you're going to pick the most prominent element to showcase first. So with Freakonomics, the most prominent element is the way these guys warp the math to make you want to read about what it is they're doing. there's no characters in this. It's just the idea that they're playing around with statistics and telling a fascinating story. That's the hook that Jennifer mentioned. That's the primary element that you want to focus on. If you want to talk about characters, you want to pick the primary main character. And one of the things you don't want to talk about is what the character looks like. That's probably what the author's going to give you right away, but who cares? That's not going to matter. You want to talk about who the character is. You want to make the character easily recognizable to whomever it is you're talking about this book with. You will definitely want to talk about the tone, and you will want to talk about pacing. And you'll want to talk about pacing because with some readers, if you don't tell them the book's a little leisurely paced or it's long but it moves very quickly, one of the things I noticed with my patrons is they definitely want to hear how long it's going to take them to read a book, and they'll still trust my judgment, but that's a piece of information readers more and more want to know, is how quickly will they get through this book, because everybody's time is precious and they're going to judge how much time they have. So you do want to talk about pacing and let them know, oh, this is one that you'll finish on a Friday night, you have nothing to do. This is one that'll take a couple of months, but it's worth every page. Goldfinch, right, Rebecca? Worth every page.
Yes. Took me months, but worth every page.
Harlan Coben, you can eat him up in a Friday night.
In a day, yeah,
You're
totally.
done. You're done. You'll also want to talk about tone, especially if that's a prevalent element to the book, because if it's very obvious, even though tone and pacing can sometimes be difficult to talk about, if you don't talk about tone, and that's an obvious thing in a book, the reader will wonder, well, did you miss something? Or why did you not tell me about this? So you definitely want to talk about the obvious elements to a book. Now, every book isn't going to have a tone that is so obvious that you have to talk about it, and every book isn't going to be super speedily paced. But if it is, those are things you must mention. And how to talk about these elements when they don't appeal to you, because I talk a great deal about books that don't appeal to me. We cannot possibly read everything. So we read as much as we can about everything so we can talk about everything. So if the story's a little too complex for you, let your readers know that it's layered. You always want to put a positive spin on your book talk, because nobody wants you to sell them a lemon of a book. That's wasting your time, and that's wasting your reader's time. So find the thing in the book that will appeal to someone and talk about that. My boss likes to say that we're all in sales, and he's right. No matter what it is you do, we're all in sales. Find something good to say about the thing that you're selling. If the characters are likable or unlikable, that is definitely something you want to talk about. And I mention that now when I talk about books, because I'm talking a great deal about 2 books with unlikable characters. And my friends and readers ask me, why do you keep talking about Gone Girl and The Dinner? And they ask me, what do I like about Gone Girl? And I say, they are utterly horrible people. Isn't that awesome?
That's how I reacted when I read that book, and I thought, no one is going to like this book because of that.
And I picked it up because Rebecca said, this book is great, it moves like water, it kept me up all night. And then I started reading thinking, these people are deliciously evil.
Right, right.
And that's something fun also to talk about in book groups. And if you haven't read The Dinner, has anyone read The Dinner? Oh, I'm so glad you have.
So, the undercurrent of evil with this
Yes.
pompous veneer is so lovely.
And there's a book that needs a book talk to sell it to people, though.
Because
It does.
but they
Because the
need
flap
to know.
does not do it. Yeah.
Yes.
They need to know that it's there, or they get really mad.
Yeah.
They do.
You gave
And
it to them, and they're like, "These are terrible people."
that is, I've been using The Dinner a lot when I talk about books with people, and I tell them right up front, you're not going to like everybody. Or the question I ask my reader is, do you have to like your characters? Because we all know people that have to like their characters in the movies, they have to like their characters in the books, and that's fine. Then I have a good idea then what kind of book I need to give them. But I'm not giving them The Dinner or Gone Girl. Because if you don't warn your reader right up front that part of the author's intent is for you to examine the wretched characters of these characters and pass judgment. on their behavior, then your reader will feel as if you're just not being completely truthful about the book. And we do want to be as honest as we can about our readers' preferences. We don't want to spoil something because it does take some time. That's part of the reveal of the dinner, is that the slow reveal is that all the dark natures of these characters come out, all of them, every single one of them, and their attitudes towards a heinous crime that 2 children have committed. And what is this crime? That's the big reveal in the middle of the book. And what are these 2 sets of parents going to do about it? And their characters unfold, and it gets darker and darker, and you might be a little disbelieving, and then you'll think, well, no, I read that in the newspaper just last week. So those are things that you definitely want to let your readers know, that these people are not likable. The book is eminently discussable. It's wonderful for a book group, but warn everybody right up front. And you tell everybody the same thing about Gone Girl. You're probably not going to like them, but that's okay. You're along for the ride. It's a speedily paced thriller with characters you don't particularly like. And a really good way to sell something like The Dinner or Gone Girl is to say, you will like yourself so much better when you're done reading it, because you would never behave in this manner, ever. But we all know somebody who has, so let's talk about that.
It's fun to feel superior, isn't it?
Yes! Biblio-Schadenfreude. So those are the elements that we talk about when we talk about books. With characters, you want to make your character as easily recognizable to your reader as possible. Ignore that physical focus. Ignore the physical, focus on the personality. With the story, if there's many storylines, focus on one prominent storyline to describe. Because if you don't, and whether you're writing your annotation or talking with someone, if you don't focus on one, the next thing you know, you'll be off on a tangent, and you don't want to see your patron's eyes glaze over. So pick one and just stick with that one. It's just so easy to talk about all the multiple plot lines. I was comparing Gone Girl with Night Circus for the twisty elements of the story. I mean, Gone Girl is the plot twists all over the place. You just don't know where that story is going. Same thing with Night Circus. So if they both have complex plots that twist, how do you describe both of them? Well, you describe Gone Girl as the hook is that twisty story with these dislikable characters. In Night Circus, the story twists, but in a far more languid, ethereal way. Think of like a fog bank rolling in over the land. And Gone Girl is not like that at all. It's darker. It's like a storm cloud. And with The Magicians by Lev Grossman, that one's kind of, it's got a lot of characters, and some of them aren't very likable. When I talk to readers about Lev Grossman's trilogy, what I hear the most is, oh, these snarky college kids, and they're whining that they have magic. Well, it's not quite like The Dinner with 4 characters who are not very likable and 4 magicians who are not very likable, but it's the tone. So that's what you would talk about, is that the tone of the Magicians series is youthful, it's snarky, it's college kids that think they know everything and secretly know that they don't. Think of it as Harry Potter noir, and you can sell the Magicians that way. You give it to your older Harry Potter readers who are looking for something different. And it's totally finished now, too, that trilogy, so they can just start and binge on Lev Grossman's Magicians series. I talked about pacing, and I can't stress that enough. That's very important to our readers now. Not all of our readers, but when I'm talking in the stacks or talking in presentations or even just talking in a bar over a beer with my reader friends, pacing is something that they all want to know about because their time is so limited. And they might fault you if you're not completely honest with them about the pacing of a book. And the same thing with tone. You might not even have to mention tone at all. The overall feel or atmosphere of a book might not be the most significant element, but when it is, you need to chat about it with your reader. It's another one of those obvious things that readers like to know. And they'll think you're holding back. They'll either think you're holding back or they'll think you haven't read it. And it's okay for us to not have read everything, but we need to sound like we know we've read everything. We need to be as expert as we possibly can on books. I haven't read every single chapter in Freakonomics. I read the drug one, it was great. For the same reason all the teenagers read the drug dealer chapter. But I could talk about this book because it's the writing style, and I know that the author takes the writing style all the way through, and that he picks different elements to talk about, like the names. That was a fascinating chapter as well.
Yeah.
That was amazing stuff. So writing versus talking when it comes to your annotations. When you're writing, add as much as you possibly can. Just hit those 4 elements: story, character, pacing, tone, and add as much as you can. And this is for writing because you can take out stuff. If you've written enough, you can take things out. Editing is easy when there's something to edit. So, okay to go overboard in the writing and then take it out. Now, it's different when we're talking. We don't want to add so much more when we're talking in the stacks, or when we're tweeting our book talks, or doing a Facebook post, or even just chatting with our friends, because then they're going to think you're kind of biblio-crazy. So you need to rein it in a little bit. It's also okay when you're talking with someone to talk about why you liked a particular book. I don't do that as much in my writing when I write up my annotations, because that just seems to take up valuable real estate in my print. But when I'm talking, the people I'm talking to do want to know what I enjoyed about a particular book. So share that when you're talking, not necessarily when you're writing. That'll come through if you're giving your book talk the way it came through for Jennifer, all the book talks she did for us. Then it turns out to be more of a conversation, and it's okay to be casual in a conversation that way. And then I just want to close up real quick, and then I'll open up to some questions. Reader reactions / guarantees. I hope that most of my friends and the readers that I chat with in the library understand that I can't deliver every book with a guarantee. Jennifer knows that, Becky knows that. Books just don't come with guarantees. You don't fail if a patron doesn't like a book. Please remember that. That's not a fail. Chef Bourdain does not fail if he makes peanut butter and chocolate frog legs. Because some people, I don't get it, just don't like chocolate. So they're weirdos. But you win when the patron comes back and talks to you. And you know, one of the things I learned when I'm book talking in my library or with my friends is that most of the time they don't remember what book I gave them that they liked or disliked. They're just happy that that's what I want to talk about. And that's how your patrons feel about you when you talk about books in the library. They may or may not remember what you gave them a month and a half ago that they liked or disliked. They just remember they had a really good conversation, and that's why they'll keep coming back, and that's why they trust you. So that's when you win, when you see that patron again. And if they can't remember what they liked or disliked about the last book, or even what you gave them, that's an even bigger win. That means that you're really doing your job well, because they want to come back and talk about their reading. That's how you know you're doing your book talking really well, when they storm you after what you're talking about and ask for more suggestions. That's the positive vibe that you should be putting out when it comes to book talking. So I'm going to stop there and tell you too that I left my business cards in the corner, and on the back of most of the business cards has my wiki address, where I've put a sample annotation form that you can use, and also sample notes from a great deal of what I talked about today. And I've got my speaking points here. I'm just going to clean them up a little bit, and then I will open it up and post it on the page that you'll be able to see right away. It's under the Art of Booktalking when you get right to the front page. But any questions about what I've covered? This is the nuts and bolts of book talking.
And it was good because we didn't talk ahead of time, but I'm going to build off of
Yeah.
a lot of the things you said.
I have a question for you and for Jennifer, actually. I book talk a ton. What do you think is necessary for the actual paper takeaway you give to
What's
specifically students?
what's right there next to you? What's on your left?
It's just a list of titles. You don't think that it needs to be annotated? You don't think it needs a picture of the cover of the book or anything like that?
Well, for students, I don't give anything.
Because that's who I talk to students.
Right, I don't give anything to the students because I'm constantly changing what I'm talking about. The first group,
will be different than the 7th group I talked to that day because the books will be gone. So if I happen to be, which is rare, going into a classroom to talk about books and then bringing them back to the library and they come later, I might make a little list of them. But normally the books are just there and they check them out right away.
I do more of the go into the classroom and then come in after school. I'm public library, but I go into schools. And I feel like I've got to give them something as a reference sheet, and that's brutal. It's brutal for me to constantly be prepping.
It is brutal.
And is it necessary?
For adults, I think so.
Kids come in after school with their list, though, and the smiley faces and the checks and stars and stuff.
Do they use a system, like my children are in an elementary school where they all are on Google, like it's for their school? Could there be a list you post, or like do you have like a website that the LRC at the school you're going into uses? Because that's what our connection with the school library and the public library. She posts all the books. They do like a book speed dating thing. They call it book shopping, and they have like 20 books for each grade, and all it has is a cover, the author, the title, a line, like, you know, from not from them, like the one line sentence, and then but the public library and the LRC director work together to pick the books. They make the one sheet, but they use it for like every 5th grade in the district, and then there's a little place for their comments, because the kids, when they do the book shopping, they sit in a circle and they don't get every book in the time, but then they can at least make a note, and then they have a thing like, just by looking at the summary, interested, maybe, and that's one sheet. And I can get you in touch with that's LaGrange Public Library and Cosset School in LaGrange, just down the street. I don't know which website it's on, but I can get you Kelly Davis's email at the Cosset Elementary School, because she really does a great job with that. And then the kids have something, it's online and it's in print, and they send a link then out to the parents. The school librarian comes in and runs it, but the school sends the email link out to the parents. It works fantastically.
Yeah.
I go into the middle schools twice a year and do a book talk with new books. And we found that when we were bringing in annotated lists, we lost the kids right away because they were reading the annotations and they knew which ones they were interested in and which ones they weren't. So we transitioned to a handout that we use with every class. We just made like 60 of them for the ones where we had a couple classes at the same time. And we've done everything from like menus to Facebook pages to now we do an iPad where you can actually like lift the app flap and there's just images that relate to the book or like a phrase or something like that. And then the kids choose based on that handout what books they want to hear about. So we have 30-ish books prepared, and they choose which books they want. And then at the end of the class period, we pass out an annotated list with a picture of the cover on it. And then that's when we give them a chance, while we're passing that out and collecting whatever the handout was that we used, an opportunity to highlight or circle or stars, smiley face, whatever it is that we've spoken about that they want to check out. And then we make sure that the books are on display in the public library, as well as if they have any of the books at the middle schools, that they have them readily available for them after we've spoken to, so that they can go to the public library or to the school library, because there's a couple of kids that live in like unincorporated parts.
So basically, you're making two sort of things. You're making an annotated list for afterwards, and then you're making some sort of a teaser.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But the nice thing about the teaser is like it's a lot of work the first time you do it, but once you have it done, you just take out the old images and put in new images or new phrases. And a lot of the times, like the phrase that we use is like the 5-word cat hook on the front of the book, or because you can't write anything better than that. Or like if it's an image, like if you know that there's something that's like super, the one thing that comes to mind is a while back, Ghost Girl was about a girl who died choking on a gummy bear. So it was like the title of the book and a picture of a gummy bear. And in every single class, the kids asked for it. So
after this, can I get your email?
Yeah.
Would you send me just a sample of what it looks like?
Yeah, I can send you. There's a couple of. I work for the Hinsdale Public Library. We under the teen section of our library, there's a reading rants section, and we have some of the stuff that we made that we weren't like. We made a menu. We made like a movie section of the newspaper, but we had to stop doing that because none of the kids knew what that was. So that's when we started doing like we did a Facebook page where like every book was either an ad on the side of the Facebook page or like they had written a status update or something like that. And now, like, we can't come up with anything better than this iPad where we actually have like flaps that lift and it's interactive. Like, if we can come up with something better than that, we'd love to do it because we've been doing it for a while. But
So it's not a handout, it's actually something that they're looking at.
we hand it to them, but it's like a laminated thing, and then we take it back at the end of the class period, and then we hand it to the next class, so that we don't have to make 1,200 of them. We just have to make, like 50 or.
I've seen Becca's thing. It's really cool. It's very interactive. It's
And then by the time we give them the annotated list, they care. And I always have parents come into the public library and they're like, my son has never asked for a book ever. I get reading specialists that stop me in the hallway and say, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. Because these kids, I have to like beat them over the head with books to get them to read. And they came in and she was like, we've been doing this book bingo thinking that it might be something they might care about. And she's like, now they're coming in and being like, well, can I use this for book bingo? And she's like, you can use whatever you want for book bingo. So, I mean, for some kids, it's just enough, and I mean, there's always going to be kids that don't care, but that's okay. Because you're talking to the kids who do. And some of the ones that you may care, and that's really special too.
I have to say though, for adults, I think it's different. So when I'm going to talk about formal book talking next, but even when I do the informal, if you're preparing a list, let's say to go with a program, before a program, I don't necessarily put a full annotation on because I lose the adults also, but I always try to have some of the books there in the front of the room, and I always at least have a list. We do a lot of trifolds at the Berwyn Library also, that we try to use like a book talk. So when like Gone Girl's popular, we did a psychological suspense trifold, and that we mix it up with pictures of book covers. Sometimes we have pictures of authors. Some things have annotations. Some just have the list of books. And so sometimes we'll just choose some of those books to book talk to highlight that. However, we also, if we're having a program on someone reenacting a character, we might book talk other books that go with that era. And we just provide a list and with the call number and let people write down what they want or just mark what they want. And they can turn it back into us to put on hold, or they take it home and they come back months later. I'm going to talk about an example of that later in my talk, and they're saying, I heard about this book. I don't remember where, but it sounds great. And that's something for them to take away. And we try to put, and I'm going to start by showing also somewhere on a website, so they can find it electronically too, easily. And I'll show you that too when I start. For adults, that works really well. But we often don't do more than just the book cover and author title. And the book covers, and what Becca said, once you start a document with book covers, you just drop and drag the next time. The first one's hard to get it all formatted the way you want. But then you just drop and drag and you delete one, put another one in, and people get used to it and they like it.
I think when I do some formal book talk programs in my community, and when I do, I always bring a handout because I'll wind up leaving it behind. But what I'm going to add now is I hadn't been in the habit of adding the book covers, but I will probably do that. Always adding the author and the title and call number so they can keep that and look it up online. But then what I'm hearing from the school librarians that I love is adding don't like, interested, love it, gotta have it. And if I put that in the sheet that I give to my adults, then they can mark it while they listen to the book talks and decide that is something that they want. And I'll probably also add one that's like good for my book group, because I do an awful lot of that. And then they can just check it off. I didn't like it, but good for my book group.
Yeah.
The dinner.
Want to talk to someone about it.
Yes.
Who liked it and understand why I didn't.
Yes, exactly.
I will talk to, I'm a children's librarian, so I see 3rd through 7th grade-ish. And I do, gotta have it, like, no, who else?
Oh, I like who else.
So they're constantly thinking about what other friend they might be able to.
And that encourages more book talking.
Which just encourages them to say to their friend, oh, I saw this book that I know you love. Kids want to check out books for their friends all the time.
What were your categories again? Gotta have it.
I actually put different emoticons.
Oh,
So
okay,
I've got
different
sun, I've
emoticons.
got a face, I've got a frown, and then I've got a question mark, who else?
Oh, who else?
I like that.
Yeah, I do too. That's why I'm cribbing that right now. So I am now going to toss this over to Becky, who's going to give you formal definition of book talking, since I gave you the casual, on the fly, go have a glass of wine book talking version. And Becky's also going to scare the hell out of you.
I'm gonna do a small book talk. Yes. I'm just gonna go over here for 1 second. This is on, right? Yes. So on my blog, RA for All, which hopefully you all already read. Well, if you're children's librarians, you probably don't. So this is the presentation documents. I have my contact information there, but if you just type RA for All into Google, it comes up pretty quickly. I'm going to talk about formal book talking, prepared book talks. And I just wanted to mention that when I did teach at Jamaican University, the Reader's Advisory course, some of you were in that class and possibly did, yeah, and Emily's here too, the book talk. That was actually an assignment, but everyone in the class had to talk about 3 books, 3 different times, prepared to talk about them. Because everyone, as we just talked about, is going to have to talk about books if you work in a library. And so this was a way to get people to get up there. Now those 3 book talks were not graded on how well they book talked. They had a written annotation too that they had to fill out. And those 3 book talks they gave, I only looked for improvement over time. And that you did it, and that you followed the basic rule. In that case, we gave people 2 to 5 minutes. But there was also always an assignment, if you wanted to, for a midterm or final, to do a 10-book book talk to an audience that you got to define, and the class pretended to be that audience. And that was a fantastic chance for the students who wanted to do a little more formal book talking. And we've been everything from, one of my favorites from one of my first classes was this actual group that existed at a Chicago Public Library branch of mature women who would exercise first and then come to the library to talk about books. And they had like their names were like the Energizer Bunnies or something. And they were basically like 50 to 60-year-old African-American women, and she was gonna have the chance to actually talk to them. The librarians took turns presenting things to them. So that was one of my favorite audiences. But we've been book groups, we've been students, we've been college students, anything that they could come up with. Today I'm using the audience that I actually have here as my audience, and we'll talk about that when I do my book talk. And I'm going to talk about your audience. But anyway, if you'd like to see examples, the very best book talks, I then asked those students to send me their annotations, which were required to prepare, because it was a midterm or a final. And those are there with that link. They're always on the blog with the label Take 10, but I have it pulled there. And those are some great ideas of book talks that you can use. And a lot of what Katie was saying starts with the annotation, and I did want to mention quickly, at the Berwyn Library we have the Browser's Corner, which is our permanent staff, books people like at the Berwyn Public Library, and it is very dorkily BPL at the BPL, that's on purpose. And we put these up, and we ask our staff, and it started with just Reader's Advisory, but now it's all staff. And we ask them to do, as long as it's not on the bookshelf, on the new bookshelf, do a book that you loved. This is actually recommendations, and sell it to its best audience, which I'm going to talk about with book talks. So these aren't book talks per se, but they are books by people on our staff, and it has their name, and you can actually search by, here's one I wrote a long time ago, and this is actually a shelf at the library too, but this is a place we put books. Here's one I did. You can search by, recommended by a specific person too. Now, I mentioned those trifolds, and you can see some of them here, because this is a physical corner at the library also. We have some of those suggested reading lists that I mentioned, those trifolds, available here, but not all. We rotate which ones. There's more available at the library. We also happen to have patron recommendations too. And those are from our Book Lovers Club, which if you're interested is meeting again on this coming Tuesday. Not today, next week. But if you just, I'm just gonna go to an old one. If you want to see an example of book talks with pictures, if this actually loads. Oh look, mine was first. So I usually talk last at Book Lovers Club. So we had people come and talk about any book they like, and then I take notes while they're talking, and then we make them a little more cleaned up, and we provide pictures. And these are actually little mini book talks that our patrons did. So that's another way to capture book talking. We do it in an informal atmosphere at a formal place in our Book Lovers Club, and then we capture the talks that people are saying, the key points, and then put them out for other people to enjoy. So that link is there also, and now I don't know how to get back.
I can't see that. Do you
you
acknowledge? I mean, I can see it, but do you acknowledge who said what?
Peter, Kathy,
Good. Okay.
Lois, yeah, just first names.
People want to see that.
People want to see that, and I'm not sure how to get off this screen back to my website. Tech people. Alt tab. Because I can't see the, no.
Oh.
Just minimize it.
Yep, and
Can
then
I-
just hit backspace on it.
Thank you. I did.
And it didn't.
Try F11.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And now if I can, do I have to minimize, or did it go?
No, your arrow's over in.
Now you should be able to go.
Now you have an arrow.
Yeah, now you
but-
have an arrow back.
But it should have opened in a new tab, so I don't know why that happened. Okay, sorry, technology. So I'm gonna talk really quickly about how to do a formal book talk. So we can leave that up for a minute. And I did pull it up. So some of my information is from that book. It's an older book now. There's the full citation. Something to talk about creative book talking for adults. It's from 2006. I'm going to talk about where you do a formal book talk first. Where could you be doing this in a public library setting? We obviously know in a school setting, you're going into the school and you're talking about books with students. And you have that sort of forced attention because it's part of their school day. In a public library setting, you have to sort of create times for public book talks. Now, I've been invited to go to groups to present, and I think a lot of people have probably had that opportunity. And they ask you to talk about services at the library maybe, and you bring along some books to do a book talk. We are trying to start implementing also book talks before our programs. We have a very vibrant adult programming situation at the Berwyn Library where we get lots of people in. So we're trying to pair books with the programming, or just using it as an example to talk about books. So anytime you're going to be talking to people about books formally prepared, these are the tips on how to create sort of what Jennifer did. How do you actually do that? How do you put the books together? Everything I'm talking about, I am putting in the book talk that I will do of 6 books at the end. I would like to say, I wrote the book talk first, and I went back to look at these old notes from when I used to teach this all the time in class and made changes. I did everything that was in here, even not having looked at it, because it's practice. I just want to say that over and over again. You can't practice enough talking about books. We talked about all these informal opportunities, but these formal ones are a great chance to grab people. And when I talk to adults, I think with kids you need to spend more time talking about the book because you got to rope them in and then pull them in for the kill. With adults, I try to do 25 to 30 seconds on a book. Maybe a minute if you have a longer time period, because they know right away if it's interesting to them or not. And if you move on quickly, you're keeping their attention. You don't want to drone on and not let them listen. And you get them for a shorter time period than you get students. So my advice is to practice. I have a book group. They get book talks all the time because it's a great chance for me to practice talking to them about books. And they love it, and they like to be my little test audience. But a book talk is not a book review. And we talked about you have to like the book. It helps if you've liked the book to sell it. I can sell any book. But that's because I'm focusing on sort of the best reader. Who is the best reader for this book? And I am selling it to them. So whether or not I like the book doesn't matter. It matters that I know that there's a best reader. So you're not passing judgment on the book. The book talk assumes the book is good for a specific reader, not for every reader, and then acts as a commercial, like a book commercial, but a commercial enticing people to read the book, as Jennifer showed. Effective book talks are also going to lead to increased circulation. And that's one of the reasons we're starting to introduce formal book talking before our adult programming, is because we're trying to keep our circulation numbers up. Now, not every book on your list is going to be checked out. Not every book you book talk. That's not the point. The point is to introduce people to all you have to offer. Sometimes a book you talk about, it takes a while to come back around. So one time we were doing women's history in March. We were doing some kind of program with a historical woman reenactor. And I created a list which was handed out. In this case, I didn't book talk it, but it was meant to sort of be used by people after they saw this wonderful woman reenacting a historical figure. And it was real women in history and books that we thought were good. And I talked about a book that is out of print. It might be back in print now, but it was out of print at the time, by Barbara Chase Ribold, called Sally Hemings.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I love that.
And before the Hemingses of Monticello came out and won lots and lots of books awards, proving that Sally Hemings had Thomas Jefferson's children, this book was written. And it was written in the 70s. And she was, some people loved her for writing this historical fiction book, and some people thought she was the devil. I mean, and there's a range in between. And this book won a bunch of awards in the women's historical fiction industry, which was very small back then. So I wrote a small little annotation, and we were using them like a book talk, except that we didn't have a chance to talk them. And people took them, and books were being checked out. And the book got checked out, and it was great, and it was out of print, so it was one of those things to showcase what the library can do. Well then, flash forward 6 months later, and my book group is giving me suggestions to add to our list of books to read for book club. And one of my ladies, who has been there for years and has been in my book club for years and knows me, said, you know, we should add this book I heard about. Something about Sally Hemings. I don't know where I heard about it, but it sounded so interesting. And I was like inside, like, yes. And we ended up putting it on the list and reading it. Never once did we be like, I told you about that book. But it was great. It was so rewarding. So remember, especially with adults, you know, it's not the same as with children. If they forget it, and I have a middle schooler and an elementary schooler, if they forget it, it's going off their radar. But adults do keep lists, to-read lists. They use Goodreads, they use other sources, and they might come back to it. And in this case, she had filed it away somewhere, and when asked about a book to read, she brought it up. And now, don't limit yourself when you're doing book talks. And what do I mean by limiting yourself? Don't just do the newest books and the hottest books. Don't just do the backlist books. You want to have a mix of books. Now, maybe your book talk is new books. My example is going to be some new horror titles. But even with that, I've mixed in an old title in a tricky way, which you'll see. But that's because I'm going to be talking to a group of librarians about good books to read this season. And when you're highlighting a genre, sometimes it's the best with adults to show maybe the newest and hottest stuff and then use it as a reminder. Especially with something like horror at our library, we have stickers on it. Remember, all those books with the horror stickers are great horror selections. Come ask us. These are just some new ones to get you excited about the genre. But you also need to know your audience when I talk about not limiting yourself. You hear that you're getting a group. We have a small business group that meets in the library, and mostly they're coming for specific reasons and training on new resources. But once in a while, the Reader's Advisory staff is allowed to talk to them about books. And one time it was, they want to hear about our new biographies. Okay, great. So it's men and women, small business owners in Berwyn. Like I said, they regularly come to the library, but they wanted some leisure reading suggestions. Just because they asked about biographies doesn't mean I should limit myself to only biographies of business people, because these are business people. I should not limit myself only to biographies about historical figures. And if I do historical biographies, if that's what they want, don't limit yourself to one time period. Don't limit yourself to one country. You want to have a range of books because you don't know, as Katie was talking about, what their appeal preferences are, what kind of pacing they like, what kind of characters they like. As you will see in my book talk, I have a wide range of horror books. Some that are gory, some that have no gore, some that are slow-paced, some that are, in something like horror, different subgenres, vampires, haunted houses, lots of different options. Just because they all are from one group and appear to be the same, you don't want to prejudge them and you don't want to limit yourself. You want to have a book for every reader. You are not trying to tell them every single founding father's great biography you have. You're saying, here's a fantastic biography about Andrew Jackson. We have tons more about other characters in that thing, but let's now talk about characters from maybe a similar time period in a different part of the world. And we're going to talk about those transitions in a minute. Again, the issues come up. I'm not going to talk about it. Do you have to have read the book? I have not always read every book that I book talk, but I've at least read some of it. And if you want a really great way to speed read, if you go to Joyce Sarex's textbook on Reader's Advisory in Public Library, I believe it's like page 130, 131, is the book Speed Reading a Book for Appeal in there. So
I'm impressed that you remember the book.
I used to hand out all the time, and we taught it together for years, so it's around there. Okay. Do not give a complete summary of the book. Please don't do that, especially to adults. I think you need more summary for children, but I'm speaking specifically about adults. A lot of the stuff Katie talked about, give sort of a feel of the book, give something key to know about the book, less than you would in writing though, and no major plot twists. However, that being said, if there is a humongous plot twist, be like, don't stop reading, or have that thing like, what happens next? And I, again, have examples of that in my book talk. All right, and I thought it was great that Jennifer talked about starting with the hook. You need to have a hook, something that leaves listeners wanting to know more. Things that are good hooks for adults, an interesting situation, tantalizing first lines. My husband will only read a book if he likes the first line. And I have met so many other people who feel that way, so if a book has a fantastic first line, I do try to use that. Mysterious characters. When you're doing a book talk for adults, you gotta think movie trailer. not book trailer, movie trailer, in a world where everything's gone terrible. And that's my first book will be sort of like that. Bits and pieces woven together to capture the audience interest without giving the story away. Adults are busy. If they leisure read, they don't want you giving away a lot. Kids want you, they want to know what's a lot more because they need to know it's worth their time to read. Adults want to know a little bit and discover it. So you want to get the interest without giving away the story. So what kind of books make a good book talk for adults? There's really no single type of book. I think if you can find a hook on a book, one aspect to serve as your central theme for your book talk, that's great. So sometimes you're given a genre or a type of book like biographies or horror, or sometimes you have, like we had a program with a Jane Austen reenactor, so we did other books. We didn't do the whole Jane Austen and other books route. We did sort of books from that era, or to give you a sense of that time. But it's better to point out, though, what isn't good, and that's going to be sort of my things. Please don't do these books. If a book is too complex that it can't be described in 1 to 2 minutes, I loved The Goldfinch. Loved it. I don't think I'm going to book talk The Goldfinch ever. It is so complex and twists and turns, and you can say that, and it doesn't, you can't give somebody an appreciative experience of reading that book. It is a fantastic book. It's one of the best books I've read in a long time. And I listened to it, actually, because I knew the pacing would be hard for me. And I loved it, but I will not be book talking it. There are like 5 different levels of plot and 12 twists, and what it's really about is not what you think it's about, is not what it's about. Don't spend your time. There are better books to explain. Don't do a book that doesn't have a wide appeal, and I don't mean that by, if it's sort of niche, because you might want to do something niche, but if there's too many limiters. Now, in my case, I have books that are really gory, but I'm going to point that out. And I make sure that not all of the books are gory. In fact, only one is extremely gory in the list of 6 horror books. If you don't like rats, the last one is pretty gory, but we'll get to that. And I have great covers for that. And if it's very controversial, you might want to stay away from it. I'm just saying. And we're going to get maybe to a 50 Shades of Grey discussion in a second. Books that are too limited in content. James Patterson does not make a good book talk. I have book talked series, popular series. I went to a church group once and book talked popular mystery series. In that case, you might want to mention, I like the Women's Murder Club makes a really good book talking mystery series, and people love it because the order is really clear because it's numbers. Yeah.
Like that alphabet lady.
The alphabet lady, I usually do her. What's that alphabet lady? So anyway, but I've book talked series, in which case James Patterson is great if you want to talk about one of his series and why it's appealing. If a book is too preachy, unless you're asked to speak at, I don't know, you're asked to speak at an NRA meeting, then maybe all your books should have guns, and that's probably a good idea. But in general, your audience is probably widely varied, so do that. And books that are appropriate to the audience. So if you're asked to speak about biographies, don't come with romances. I mean, just make sure you're thinking about that. And that's because you shouldn't have a book talk ready that you can give to every audience. You're gonna need to tailor this, especially with adults. I think with students, you can take a larger list and move from room to room and use it because they're all in X grade or they're all doing something and their Common Core needs you to hit this. And I do volunteer at the school library, so I see a lot of those. But you need to tailor your book talk to your audience. And my last thing of books not to book talk, to use in a book talk, are blockbuster books, like a 50 Shades of Grey or Harry Potter or Da Vinci Code. However, an excellent book talk is, so you loved 50 Shades of Grey, here are all the other books you can read. Make sure your audience is okay with that one. But we have done the Dan Brown. Like, you guys all love Dan Brown. We're going to be doing a Monuments Men one because we're doing a double program in November of the movie and then a guy coming and talking about the Monuments Men. And we're going to be having book talks before each one about other books you might be interested in if you came to these talks. There's a great thing. People don't need you to sell them Monuments Men. You don't need the circulation statistics on Monuments Men, but other books that they might like. That's where you are doing this. You're advertising not just books, but your library services. And it's what Katie said too. You're successful if they want to come talk to you about more books. Other considerations I mentioned, mixing old and new titles. If it's appropriate in fiction and nonfiction with adults to provide balance, I even sometimes throw in DVD TV series, movies sometimes, but I find that the DVD TV series, we just read Girls of Atomic City in my book club, and I have a 4-part on my blog, and Manhattan's so popular right now, so people are coming in talking to me about Manhattan. Now, it's not available on DVD yet, but it will be. And so we're going to start, book talking those together. And you can read about that on my blog if you search Girls of Atomic City. Good covers to show the books. Some of the horror books I picked for this talk are specifically, they were good books. There might have been better, but their covers are fantastic. Make sure you own the books at your library that you're book talking. I say that every time, and I would be like, there have been times I've put a book in a book talk and I've had to take it out because we don't have it, or I've made my library buy it. And there's an example on there that I actually made my library buy it. Because it's a good book to have. If it's good enough for me to book talk, it's probably good enough for us to own. But if you don't own it, or like it's old and you just weeded it, take it off your list, okay? All right. Pick books to fit your audience, not the other way around. Okay, the book talking order. This is the hardest thing to do. All of us can talk about books. All of us can sell books to people. We all have our little tips and tricks to do it. When you're doing a formal book talk, how do you put them in the order you want to do it? The order matters. Please don't be the librarian who book talks them in alphabetical order. I have been to those book talks. I'm like, really? Because I didn't get asked enough, why are you going to library school? You already know the alphabet. So let's just do that. So take your audience on a journey. You want to begin. You want to attract their attention. I'm going to start with a book that's one of the best books I've read all year. That's a great way to talk. Emily knows what book it's going to be. It's going to build to a climax in the middle. And at the end, you're going to leave people satisfied and wanting more. Each book talk means something different about this. You will see this in my book talk, where I start with a book that I loved. And I move through, I get my gory book out of the way, the next one. And then I slowly move through. I get a haunted house in there. And I get a short story book. And I get a slower paced book that has vampires, because you have to have vampires. And then I come back around and mention another author that came up earlier, and I end with a classic that's being reissued. It's a journey. It's a journey. Normally, if I'm giving the talk, I wouldn't tell you all that ahead of time, but this is instructional, so I'm letting you know. I thought about that. Other ways you can do it. Start with a shorter book, maybe one that has an unusual plot, a character, a setting to attract attention. Then your next book, you'll notice in my talk there's transitions, so your next book needs to have something in common with the first to segue. At some point, you're going to have to make sort of a jump, and my jump is like, well, now we need vampires, because I'm in the middle of a book talk, and it's horror, and we don't have vampires. But I use an unusual choice as a vampire book to keep the interest. Sometimes things you can use for segue: genre, time frame, pacing, setting. I use tone for my first two. My first two have the same tone. One is gory, and one has the first one has absolutely no blood, or maybe a little, but not a lot. The second one is an all-out gore fest. And so, but they're the same tone. So you get an example of two readers who like intense dread and anxiety, but different ends of the gore spectrum.
I can't wait to hear these books.
I know. So anyway, I did mention that we talked about at length. You need something that people can follow along, not too much for adults. Just something where they can jot down ideas. I like maybe making them vote real quick. The smooth transitions, though, that's what carries your audience along. Because even if they don't like the book you're talking about, there's another one coming. And short. You'll see they're short. Match the style of the talk for each book to the book. I think Jennifer did a fantastic job at that. You know, if it's funny, she's getting the funny out. If it's interesting, she's really focusing on the interesting. She's getting the audience involved. Do you have a dog? Like, that's all, those are all great tips. And your last book should be extremely memorable. In my case, I'm picking a book that's a classic that's being reissued, that there's going to be a lot of interest in come January. And why it's also memorable is, since it's an older classic horror title, it's got some great covers over time. So I have like 4 covers across, and it's going to really leave an imprint on people. Okay, when you come to a book talk, you do have to make sure you have some way for someone to go home with something. I want to make sure that's clear. I often am carrying the books upstairs for my department. So, and sometimes I want to leave the books downstairs for people to discover on their way out and not leave them in the room, especially because if people have to leave, they're adults, sometimes they leave the program early. I don't want them to feel like, oh, I can't get the book. So I usually, if I take the books, I bring them back down and put them out like at the circulation desk and then file them away when the program's done. But one great way is what I'm going to do. Just put the covers on a Google slideshow and just show the cover while you talk. And we already have a setup for AV, usually for most programs, so that's really easy to do. And make sure you have your notes. I didn't see if you did this, but some people like the book because then you can put a sticky note on the back. And it's like you're looking at people. That's really great. And similar, my book, well, there it is because I scrolled down, is full of annotations, which you can also use as book talks. They're written in a way, and it's, I don't even know how many, like 200-300 horror books by subgenre. And so you can use those and just read those as a talk, and that's fine. I don't mind that. You can't write them somewhere without permission. And in fact, we're going to go on to my talk, but, and I'll take questions after because the talk shows a lot of this stuff. You will be seeing these books and some of what I've said, but not what I've written, in a library magazine that is not Booklist in a few weeks. Sorry.
Shall not be named.
You know what? I already did all the work. So on the screen are the books that I'll be talking right now with your author title for you. So that kind of gave away the books, and The Rats is that classic one. Oh, the covers are great. And I do have a link to the slides so you guys can see what is going on.
Did you want to sit, Becky, and I can do your slides for you?
Yes, that would be fantastic. It's kind of clear when you want to switch.
Okay.
Okay, so again, I'm knowing my audience. My audience are you guys. My audience is a bunch of librarians who came to a program about book talking, and it happens to be within a month of Halloween. And let me tell you, if you haven't started thinking about Halloween yet, you are in big trouble. There's a reason all my Halloween deadlines are August 1st, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into doing this. So, as Halloween approaches, it is time to get ready for the hordes of patrons that are coming into your libraries, hungry for scares, and they're going to start coming, and they're going to start coming in droves. And you're going to get people from the hardcore fan to the more timid reader who just wants a taste of horror. And in fact, I think that's probably going to be one of your most popular people, because the hardcore fans aren't necessarily asking you for help. Well, they ask me, but they might not ask you. So I would like you to prepare to defend yourself with some timely suggestions. Okay, one of the best books I have read all year, this entire year, is a terrifying story of a world where an unknown threat has killed off almost every person on Earth. And it's unknown threat. And the only way to protect yourself is to never open your eyes. In Josh Malerman's claustrophobic debut novel, Bird Box, a young mother and her 2 small children brave the unknown horrors of this outside world, piloting a boat down a river near their home to a possible place of salvation, all with their eyes firmly shut. Told both in the present and with flashbacks to 4 years ago when the world as we know it ceased to exist, Bird Box is marked by an intense sense of dread that starts oppressively, and it continues to build throughout. There is no gore here, none, but it makes you feel the fear, and that's even more intense. Now, for an equal sense of dread, but on the complete opposite side of the gore spectrum, Nick Cutter's The Troop. You can even tell from the title, this red, or from the cover, all this red. Set on an isolated and uninhabited island a few miles off the mainland of Prince Edward Island, a troop of Boy Scouts and their leader have a survival excursion. Great idea. No communication, storm coming in. It's interrupted by the appearance of a stranger who is completely consumed, both physically and mentally, by hunger. Once the hungry man enters their world, this fight to survive the disease, each other, and even the people trying to keep this biomedical hazard contained begins. We feature a fluidly shifting narration in this story from those both the monsters of this real world and the children and then the doctor. And then this unknown thing that's haunting everyone, attacking everyone, really. And there's monsters both real world and unearthly in this story that we have to contend with. And the anxiety never stops, constantly battling these, moving back and forth in time with everybody. The panic intensifies and the gore just gets piled on top of the gore, on top of the gore. This is visceral horror, but there's a lot more at work here than just the gore. It is not just gore for gore's sake. There's a desperation of knowing you're trapped, knowing that you're contagious, and knowing that you're doomed. That is here too. Now, maybe the haunted houses are more your thing. They're a little less people attacking you and eating at your insides. So I also have a YA topic book here, Amity by Nicole Ostow. Now, yes, this novel is purposely playing off the fear you already feel by having the town of Amityville invoked. Now, please don't mistake that for this being a copycat. It's an homage, but it is totally original in and of itself. What she weaves is a distinct, unsettling tale of two families living in a house called Amity. But their stories are on two different timelines 10 years apart, and it does go back and forth. But as the evil of the home slowly reveals itself through these two different storylines that eventually converge, no one is left unscathed in this story. Or is it all just in their heads? Which is what is so fun about reading this book. And once you step inside of Amity, it's really hard to show what is real and what is all in your head. This is a dark, atmospheric tale that's great for people who love horror stories, whether they're teens or adults, but find maybe some of the work by popular adult authors like Peter Straub or Stephen King just a little too gory. You get the same feeling, but without all of that actual blood involved in there. And of course, what's a list of horror books without a vampire story? Lauren Olson's debut novel, The Quick, is set in Victorian England and is the story of a young poet who accidentally gets wrapped up in a complicated world of a secret club. The novel has the leisurely pace of the Gothic novels from the time period in which it's written, and you can get a sense of that from the cover. Readers who sit back and take in the well-drawn characters, the intrigue, and the intricate plot are in for a great ride. If you think Dickens meets Dracula, you have a sense of what The Quick has to offer. Now, short stories are often a great bet during the Halloween season because they offer the casual horror fan snippets of creepy fun. A recent great option is The New Black, edited by Chicagoan Richard Thomas, who has his first novel coming out with Random House in January, his own horror novel. It also has an introduction by Bram Stoker award-winning author Laird Barron. It features tense, atmospheric, and twisted stories by acclaimed authors like people you've heard of, Benjamin Percy, Roxane Gay, who is very popular these days with adult authors, and Craig Davidson, who, by the way, you do know because he published The Troop under the name Nick Cutter above. These neo-noir tales merge literary fiction with any combination of dark genre fiction, from crime and horror to fantasy or Southern Gothic, with touches of the grotesque along the way. So readers who just want to dip their toes into those forbidden depths of horror should start here with some shorter works by today's dark and twisted tales authors who do a great job. And I actually went to a reading and opening of Richard Thomas for this book at Bucket of Blood, downtown Chicago, since we're a Chicago audience mostly here. And he read from this, and these are great. If you want to do little snippets of read-alouds for adults in your horror programming, also a great option. Now, finally, I'd like to end with a classic. I love this. In January of 2015, there is going to be a new edition of the classic James Herbert tale, The Rats, with a new introduction by Neil Gaiman. So this is going to be a book that people are going to want to read. Right, so why not get on the bandwagon early? You probably have a copy of this book in your collection. It is a classic horror story. Herbert died last year, so a lot of people did rebuy some of his classic stories. So don't wait. Show your readers that you're on the cusp, you know what's going to be hot, and start taking your reserves now for this fantastic Neil Gaiman introduction copy. So let's take this story too. You take the, it's a grisly novel, and it's the ubiquitous urban menace, rats. You don't need to tell people much other than rats, and they go, okay. And unleashes onto the populace of London a bunch of rats that are not only intelligent, but they're predatory. Fun times. It's got gruesomely terrifying results, but it is older, so it's not that in-your-face horror that we get a lot with a lot of authors now. If you think zombies are scary, look, they don't actually exist. I hate to break it to you.
Yeah.
These guys do. So, you know, get your patrons on the bandwagon early by suggesting this tale, and it's sure to satisfy because it's lasted the test of time. And it's not like, oh, here, read The Shining or read The Exorcist. It's a book that you have, it makes you look smart as librarians, and it fills their need to read something kind of gross at Halloween. So, this is just a small sample of the newest scares that are available for you to give out to your patrons. Most of these books, with the possibility of possibly The New Black, you probably already own. The New Black did get reviewed in major journals, so you might have it. I suggest getting it. And come on in. Tell your patrons to come on in and find more books because you have tons of horror suggestions lurking on your shelves that need to be read this time of year.
That was awesome.
The Rats is going to be a good one. Go with The Rats.
I love those covers. You
Yeah.
can see the change
Yeah.
in the years. I mean, that second cover, that's so
And
late
I picked
70s,
that
early
last
80s.
one for
And
that.
first one is like, it's got that James Patterson 90s look.
And the new one's just The Rats, Neil Gaiman. You know, all you need is Neil Gaiman on there. Like,
Yeah.
lots of people will want it.
kind of has that graveyard book
Yeah,
look
yeah.
to it.
It's got the Neil Gaiman look. Yeah,
Yeah, it does.
not the James Herbert look. And just for FYI, there's a brand new James Herbert award. It's a new horror award by his estate, and it's going to be, the first ones are coming out soon. When he passed away last year, they used some of his estate money to do that. So
What's it for?
I forget exactly, but I think it's kind of like that Shirley Jackson Award, like someone who exemplifies the type of book he had written. It's one of those.
Okay.
I'll have information about it on my horror blog.
I will look for that.
All right, so we've got time here if you guys want to chat with us more about book talking, the things that you guys do, or if you have questions specifically for Becky, and then we can open it up for other questions as well. So kind of take it away.
I have a question. Lately, what I've run into when book talking and suggesting books is language seems to be a big, I hadn't heard this before, and it's pretty recent, in the last couple months. Swear words, foul language has really come up more than once. And so, is there a good resource to, other than, I mean, I read the books and recommend them other than reading them. Is there a good resource anybody is aware of that gives you a hint that there might be foul language in it or extreme language? That's, I can't, other than reading a snippet.
If it has a lot, you'll see it places. And I often, when I want to know that, I go to Goodreads or Amazon and look at some one-star reviews. When I'm looking for limiters, I go to one-star reviews because you see what someone hated about the book. So we have a reader who's a homebound patron at the Berlin Library that we all help pick books for, and you can't have the word cancer in the book. You can't have a mention of cancer. She gets very upset, even though we've said it's hard for us. We don't, even if a peripheral character has cancer and they're mentioned in conversation, she's upset. That is really hard to find. But even then, if we go to some one-star reviews, once in a while we find people with similar misgivings. But if there is a swear word that is out of the tone of the story, or there's something graphic or limiter of some type, it shows up with those people who hated the book.
Got it.
But I don't know.
And if that's prevalent, then usually you'll be able to find that in a review. I do use, that's one of the things I like about using Booklist online, is that I can do a really quick search and then it just searches the text and the reviews, and I can find if there's a lot of gore, the reviewer that they have on staff who likes that sort of thing makes darn sure that the rest of us know that that's there.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I mean, I don't mind a whole lot of gore, but I have a lot of readers that don't want to read. And when I say gore, Becky, it's not horror gore.
No, I know what you mean.
It's serial killer.
So yes, no,
It's
yes.
slice your throat gore.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
the stuff I need to know. The language, I'll be honest with you, language is the toughest thing to warn my readers about, because we're so used to that, and I'm speaking now as a reviewer, that I don't always mention that when I review my books. I will mention that if I'm reviewing audio, because then it's more in your face, in your ear. But when I'm reading, no. So that's something that when I have a limiter such as language, it's hard for me to talk about that. But I can talk about sex, and I can talk about the violence level and the gore factor in books.
Yeah, and the gore factor is a bigger issue in horror. People expect it. So I try to go out of my way to mention the books that don't have it, because people think they all have it. But with my readers, yes, the suspense and crime, if there is too much, and you don't know what the person's level is. Like, I have people who will read James Patterson forever, and those books are pretty violent. But then they'll get an author who I think is the equivalence of violence, but because maybe they're not used to that author, they're like, oh, that was too much for me. So even people can't always articulate how much that they want. So again, I think you mentioned no book has a guarantee.
No book.
I always say, if you hate this book, as soon as you start hating it, close it, bring it back. One, we have to look at all the books we have. And two, I say this all the time, and I don't think you can say it enough. Because people, I think we check if they read it. And I always say, we don't know, and we don't check, and we don't care if you've read the book. We want you to enjoy it. And if just saying that frees them up so much. And I say it almost every day, and every day I get, oh, ha, ha. But in their, in the back of their head, they're like, thank God. So that helps too, if they have permission to stop reading it. It's harder with kids though.
And I encourage my adult patrons to come back and tell me if they didn't like it, because I tell them I learn a lot more about what you like when you tell me what you don't like, because you'll be far more animated, and there's more fabulous adjectives for you to use for bad things than there are for good things. So come back and tell me what you don't like. Get all indignant. We'll both love it, and I will learn a lot more about what your reading tastes are. And then what I actually learn is that likely I've given them a book that I kind of know something about. They've just done the legwork for me. There's too much violence in here. They killed a puppy. There's bad language. Because the animal one is the one I hear.
Oh, that is the one.
Do any dogs die in this book? I don't know.
Are any animals injured? I was like, wow, you will read a story about a child being murdered and left for dead, but the cat got it, and you're done. And that's
yes.
Okay.
More than anything.
That is the biggest one by far, and also talking animals.
Yes.
Talking animals?
I have a person who would love Haruki Murakami. Like, that would be her perfect book, but she won't read it because pretty much cats talk in every one of his books. And
the last Haruki Murakami, stuff happens to cats. I got yelled at myself.
I'm about to start listening to it because something happened to the cats. Because usually his cats are okay. They're just talking. Oh no. Oh, that's not good.
Yeah. So I mean, you don't know what your readers' buttons are.
Right.
And they don't always.
And sometimes they don't know. But encourage them to come back and talk to you, because really what you're building up is the trust. That's the most important thing. And it's not the trust that you know what they'll like. It's the trust that they can ask you for something.
And we try to create a culture of talking about books, you know, in our area at the library, where people now know that they can come and just talk about books. We are not a quiet area. Like, there's no quiet where we are. And it's not supposed to be. There's a reference department with, unfortunately, the adult nonfiction's on a different floor, but we've made that choice so that we can be near circulation, so we're intercepting those book talks. By the way, I literally pull people away from circulation. Come over here and talk about the book. The circulation people send them over. But I can hear it, even if they're in a conversation, I don't want to step in there. People know that part of the library is where we talk about books. And good or bad, you tell me about it. And talking about the legwork, I now have patrons who trust us enough, not that we give them good books all the time, but they trust us to know enough about them that they'll take a book home, read it, and come back and tell us about it for us. Like, you know, this one sounded like you'd really like it. And she came, and this one lady wouldn't do it for years. And finally she took one. She's like, that book was great. I'm like, well, tell me about it. Now I don't have to read it. You know, and so she got to talk about it. And then other people heard her, and someone took it from her and then checked it out. You know, she's like, I haven't checked it in yet. And I'm like, they'll do that. Don't worry. So she was book talking. And you just got to keep, like I said, practice. If you're talking about books with your community in different locations at different times, they'll start to know that you're a place where you talk about books. And then they'll join the conversation.
So following up on that,
Yeah.
my library doesn't do any formal book talking events. I love that you mentioned doing book talking before other programs. I'm going to start doing that. How else, what other suggestions do you have for getting that going?
Do you have an outreach department at your library who are going places? Or
Little bit.
Okay, so we try to talk about books when we're at things. So we have people that specialize in talking about the children's books at the schools. That's, you know, a lot of you do that. But there's so many more places to talk about the books. So we go to like Oktoberfest, and maybe we don't do, if we come with books we're ready to talk about, in that case we don't usually bring the books because we're doing shifts and not everybody. But we have a list of books that our department has said we're going to talk about. And it's a little more of that formal and informal. So whoever's at Oktoberfest can talk about certain books that we're pushing. When we are at, I'm trying to think of other places we go, because we do anything in the library. Like, even when they have teen game time, she does board gaming with them on Thursdays. She has books she's talking about while they're setting the games up. You know, she's putting it into places. We have some books that we're sort of pushing at the moment that we keep at the desk, little things we can talk about. Maybe it has to do with a display we have up. Hey, did you know about this book? And so we're doing it just with random patrons who don't know what they want to read. That's what we use that Browser's Corner for a lot too, is to say, you know, so-and-so just wrote about this book. You know, let's talk about that. I do it with my book clubs. We do book talking of other books they might enjoy. I'm trying to think of other places. We do go to a lot of community things, and it's not always someone from our department, so we give them ideas of books to talk about.
We do it before events. We're not doing, I love the idea of doing formal book talks before.
Yeah, and we do
events.
like 3 books, you know, give them a list of 6 or 7. We
But
just started doing that.
We always have folks that, you always have people attend your events early because they want a good seat. And that's a good time to just circulate and just chat with them. What are you reading? Have you heard about this? Or leave some of the books scattered around. We're able to corral them because they have to get their parking validated, so that's a really good
Nice.
it's a really good time to grab them.
I
Yeah,
like
they get captive. We also deploy an awful lot of our public affairs staff at our events, and they're all willing to talk about what they're reading because I hammer that into them, and they all need a ready-made conversation starter, and that's it. That's a good one. So we're starting. We talk very casually before the events, not formally. I do like that idea though.
We're just experimenting with the formal. We always are talking casually about the books. And when I finish a book that I've loved too, I come up with a little like tagline for it. So I read this book, The Bees. Did you read that? Lillian Paul.
Yeah.
And I called it was a little different than the marketing because I thought it was Watership Down meets Divergent. And that basically explains the book. It's with bees because there's a bee on the cover. You don't have to, if you're holding the book or you have the cover, you don't have to say that because there's a bee. So it's Watership Down meets Divergent with bees. And literally it's the story of a hive of bees and one of them is a divergent bee and it's her story. But if you've read Watership Down and loved it with the rabbits and you're okay with bees, which some people are not, I found out. They're like, oh no, not bees. Like, okay, moving on. Rabbits fine, bees no. So, and talking animals, of course not. So you find that out right away. And, or like one of the series that you talked about, a series that's complete. I love when series finish because I can book talk. She talked about The Magician, so I've been talking about the Last Policeman trilogy, which is one of my favorite trilogies by Ben Winters. And so it's so easy to book talk because it's a hard-boiled PI story, 3 books, except it's set in a pre-apocalyptic world. And so you just say that to people and they're like, what? Tell me more. Or, that's too weird, move on. So you get them right away and you're like, well, basically it's a world, it's the world now, but we know an asteroid's going to hit, we know the day it's going to hit, we're pretty sure most people are going to die, we can't guarantee you're going to die, and it's the story of the last 6 months or so and how civilization sort of unravels because a lot of people go like do their bucket list and the cellular phone networks and internet go down because no one wants to take care of those anymore. They want to go do something or go hole up somewhere. But it's all of this setting with one guy who just became a police officer, and because everybody has quit, he's now the top detective in a small town in New Hampshire. And it ends up being the whole series is about his personal search to find out what happened to his sister, like where she has gone and what's going on with her, and to see if there's any conspiracy actually involved with this asteroid. And the beauty of it is, I can tell you now, it ends perfectly. Although someone came in and told me, I didn't like the ending, but I did too, because it's a pre-apocalyptic novel.
Okay.
So if the apocalypse comes, it's not a pre-apocalyptic series anymore. I gotta stress that enough. If you want to know what happens after the asteroid hit, you're reading a post-apocalyptic novel. So I tell people that. I'm like, but the ending is just beautiful. It's just perfect. And it's so satisfying to finish a series and get to a perfect ending. But I do that with a lot of series. When the series is done, I have better chance because you do not want to book talk. And they'll be like, and they come back, are there more? Yeah, you have to wait 4 years. So.
Yeah, I don't do Game of Thrones.
Yeah, but we do Game of Thrones read-alikes.
Yeah, I'll do the read-alikes.
Yeah.
Series that are not finished.
Yeah.
At some time I did like series of historical mysteries and
Yes.
Do you book the first book, the last book in the series?
Or the best one in the series? Oh, that's a great question. First, last,
I try
best.
to talk about the appeal of the series. Why I try to get away from the plots. Why do people want to read this series? So if you're talking about like one that always comes up to me is Donna Leon's series that takes place in Venice. So right. So you're talking about that series because you love food, and there's lots of food in there, lots of good, and you love Venice and the setting. And then you talk a little bit about the type, so it's a police detective in that case. So you talk about the type of detective and the setting and something interesting about it. But specific plots, no. So if you're talking about, oh my goodness, what's her name? The sex crimes lady. It's totally missing my head.
Tess Gerritsen?
No,
Karen Slaughter?
I forgot now. Forget it, it's gone.
How do you handle series for teens, Jennifer?
As in, I usually just talk about the first one actually, for me, mostly because I usually only read the first one of the series. As we were talking about before with not reading at the real book talking, the popular books, I never finish Hunger Games or Divergent because I need to read other stuff for them to be reading. So I always usually just talk about the first one.
Sometimes for the first one, the covers are so faded and 80s looking for those long series over paperback. So if I bring the first book in that long series, it seems like I'm not promoting.
Here you go. This is the easy way around that. Take that book, go on the internet and find the nicest new cover and tape it on there. And be like, this is what our copy looks like, but this is the one you know, and I swear it's the same book. Yeah. 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 Disclaimer, this is what it actually looks like. This is what it's on Amazon right now, or what's at the bookstore. It's the same book.
How do you pick your nonfiction, Jennifer?
For the nonfiction, I look mostly at a lot of the awards lists, and we get Junior Library Guild, and they have a lot of good suggestions for theirs, and even the ones I don't get from there that I don't subscribe to, I find other places, which I probably shouldn't be saying that, but and then I browse the bookstores. Most of our nonfiction that gets checked out in our school is the biographies, because we do a big biography project in January and February, so I'm always booking biographies. So I'm looking in the bookstores for biography sections or any nonfiction that there's a prominent character or something that we could use for that.
And now I have a question for all the school librarians, because when I do book talking for the public or special programs, I can do a mishmash of stuff for the adults. But do you get asked to do book talk programs on a subject or a theme or a unit for the students, and how do you work that? How do you pick the best stuff for that?
I get asked that all the time. Last week I did graphic novels for 5th graders. I did realistic fiction for accelerated 3rd and 4th graders. This morning it was a graphic novel book talk to teachers to get them to use graphic novels in their classrooms. Honestly, I use Novelist a lot.
Yeah.
I will go and I will search whatever subject I'm looking for, and then I look for the word starred in the review field, and that gets my list going. And lots of times seeing a specific title will trigger, oh yeah, there was that one and there's another one too. It's just a matter of, I work in a department of, 8 of us, and we talk a lot. So if I say I'm doing nonfiction graphic format for 5th grade, everybody's got a book or two that they want to add to my list.
And you share your materials too, like you'll if someone will say, hey, I need that in 2 months from now, do you mind if I borrow it?
Yeah, we share materials, and actually I have a networking group in Rails, in school facilitators networking group, and we have started to share our book talks. So we actually make them available as a Word document, shared drive in Google, where when somebody says, I need graphic novels for 5th graders, it's titled Graphic Novels, 5th grade, Realistic Fiction, 3rd grade, top books of 2014, those kinds of lists, and we're gonna start to share those so that we're not recreating them all the time.
And we do that in our department, like when we did the 50 Shades of Grey. Ironically, our one guy is the one that did the list. He did a fantastic job. He read all 3 books. And then he made the list that's on our browser's corner, and then we all used it to talk to patrons about 50 Shades of Grey. And when he was doing it, we all had a chance. It's on our shared drive at work to add ideas to it, but there's just too much to do and too much to cover. So we just divide and conquer and share.
We do the same thing. The 50 Shades of Grey and the read-alikes.
Yeah.
We get it all the time. My kids read all the Wendy Kid books.
Yeah, exactly.
So we all maintain a list of sorts. Of here's another Wendy Kid read-alike.
Yeah.
Here's another Wendy Kid read-alike. Here's another Lightning Thief read-alike.
I was gonna say Percy Jackson, yeah.
Percy Jackson and Wendy Kid are the 2 big read-alikes.
The ours in the children are right near my desk, so I'm constant, and I have children who I like that series, doing read-alikes for, and I'm in the adult section for the Percy Jackson.
I wanted to comment a little bit on something you said, Becky, about having your patrons book talk to you.
Yeah.
Everybody wants validation, and including kids, teens, adults, whoever. I will always say to a kid, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm not a 5th grader, and I don't like fantasy all that much. Do you have good fantasy recommendations for 5th graders? And kids always want to talk. You know, and you could say that to any patron. I never read the 50 Shades of Grey books. It's not really my cup of tea, but it's your cup of tea. What else do you recommend? People want to go on and on. Sometimes you have to back away a little bit.
Yeah, we do that a lot.
But you have a lot of really great knowledge from your patrons, and if you acknowledge that right from the get-go, look, I don't know that genre. I don't read that genre. Help me. People want to.
Yeah, we encourage that at our desk, and we get it now from people all the time. Tell us about it.
I am very happy to turn my patrons and book group members into my biblio foot soldiers, because I can't read everything, and they're so happy to do that, and because they like the conversation. They don't just want to tell me something, they love the conversation and the atmosphere. So I love doing that.
And in a public library setting, the more you get your patrons involved, and the more you get them to feel like they're part of the service. And I also happen to be the Friends liaison in my library. Those are the people I get to join the Friends. Those are the people that are donating money. Those are the people that are coming to programs. And then when you get to more critical moments, those are the people that are voting yes on your referendum. So the whole idea of, you know, yes, we talk about books people have downloaded, you know, also. I mean, we don't limit it to just physical books. But the whole idea that the library isn't a place for books anymore is on, you know, people think that, but that's all we do when you first walk in. The research is downstairs at our library, the computers are upstairs. And what we do on the main floor, where the circulation desk is talk about books and talk about reading. And the children's department is there too, and the teens. So we're all about the leisure reading, and we're getting people invested. They're talking to us, they're sharing with us. They love the services, they participate then. And then in a public library situation, it's the participation, and then so much so that they can't do without you. They join the Friends, they vote yes. Those are the things that get your community to have a stable library over time.
To address your question about asking school librarians about themed book talks, we will get asked once in a while to do book talks based on themes within a book. So juniors read the things they can't read, so they wanted to find the themes in that book. Now finding more books at a higher reading level or higher, you know, more mature reading interest level that will address some of those themes throughout this book. Or the multicultural one where we did it last year. We did it it was like semester 1. They were separated by, I think, country, and then we found that students really wanted to know if it was historical fiction or present day fiction. So seeing how they gravitate if you're doing a gallery style can help you change it for the next time the teacher wants to do a similar project. So.
And where I work, we do a lot of silent sustained reading where kids are required to read 400 pages of order, so to speak. And in order to create a book buzz, I do something called brown bag bookends. Throughout the entire lunch period, kids can come in and they get silent sustained reading credit from their English teacher. They get an exit ticket from me, so to speak. And so they sit in a large circle like this. Many of them run down to the caf to get a hot lunch, not to lie, to do it around it. Nonetheless, and that's a great way where patrons or students can recommend books to other students. And then we do something similar for faculty as well. And that seems to create that buzz and get kids excited. You know, exchange books right over there saying, like, I'll take this one, you take that one, see how it goes.
One thing my daughter's school did last year, it was her last year in elementary school, and she was in like the advanced reading class, and so that teacher had them take the next year, so this current year's Rebecca Cottle books, but they weren't announced yet, and she had them make book trailers for the new 5th and 6th graders coming, sort of like something they could leave behind as they went on to junior high. And they're starting to use them now. Like I said, I go into the school library at the elementary school 2 days a month to help out. And I learn a lot by doing reader's advisory to kids. That is the hardest. You guys do a great job. They made these great book trailers. And it was like, it was their way to sort of book talk the books to the next students. And someone mentioned, you know, I think you did back there, you know, I'm not a 5th grader. These are 6th graders. When they were 6th graders, this is why they thought they'd want to read these books. And it served as a sort of way to have a book talk conversation between the students without it being awkward, like, oh, I'm telling you what to read, because I was a 6th grader last year and I know. And they've been using them to great success and really fun.
I thought it was interesting, Jennifer, that you said that you never finish a series. There is not one single series that I have
Yeah, I barely finished the series.
I think kids gasp, like,
Yeah.
how did you not read all the Hunger Games? How did you not read all the British books? Do people do
Librarians.
librarians
I know
actually
one
read?
person who has to read.
Who has the time?
I know, yeah.
Read all of these books.
You've read all the Game of Thrones, right? But you've had time because those books take a while.
Well, sort of,
Yeah,
but only because I felt compelled.
yeah,
And I found myself with a weird vacuum of time.
yeah.
But mostly, that's pleasure reading. That's not
Right,
because I felt like I had to for my patrons.
right. Yeah, I read a lot of first books in a series.
I freely admit to have quit Outlander.
Yeah, a lot, but
At
you
the
it's
book
going on
4.
forever. Yeah. The series thing though, what I do love is my patrons who love series because then I have a while till I have to get back to them. But I am leading the Adult Reading Roundtable's crime fiction genre study. We're about to start year 2 soon, so we're almost through the first year. And there is someone there who's involved with the administrative aspects of it. She's the note taker, who is obsessed with series and has to read the first book. And for one of the series, the assignment said you couldn't read the first book because we were using it as an example of rural police detective, and the first book is urban, and then that's the switch that makes it a rural series. And she's like, well, I'm reading the first one anyway, and then she's now got to read the whole series. She just gets obsessed. So there are some people who do.
Well, I can sell some books simply because it's part of a
yeah,
series.
yeah.
I mean, kids want a series, and parents want series for their kids so that they don't have to think about the next 5 titles.
People are shocked that I don't read the whole series, though.
People are shocked that I don't read the whole series, and I'm sure that all of us, if you told your patrons,
yeah.
I used to read the whole series before I started working at the library. Now, I don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
I know, it's so sad. So yes,
I do have certain series though that I save for when I'm in like a reading rut, or I know I'm going on vacation and I want to have one book that I know. And for me, it's the Louise Penny mystery series. So I've actually only read the first 3 because I don't have time to read things I like. But I know that if I'm going on vacation, I usually pre-order. Like I'm on book 4, so I'll pre-order book 4. And if I take it on vacation or not, but I know I have it at home, I can pack it. I can. And if it's there, if I don't like what I did bring, or if I'm reading something I have to read for work, unfortunately, on vacation, I have something else I can read for fun. And that one I'm purposely slowing on. Yeah. I know, but they're all so good.
I like that. I do that too. I do that with Jim Butcher.
Yeah, Jim Butcher's good for that too.
Yeah. I'm on book 4 eventually, and he's got what?
But I give out Louise Penny all the time.
Yeah.
If the first book if the first 3 are on the shelf at the Berwyn Library now, I'd be shocked. Like we're always getting people. Same with Maisie Dobbs.
Calling everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, Cuckoo's Calling. Yeah. I just listened to that. That was great. I'm on hold for the audio.
Yeah, that's great. But I order mystery for our library, so I'm like, as much as I would like to start a series and finish, I can't. I have to cast a writer. Not just in general, but specifically in mystery, so I can talk to patrons.
Yeah, and I happen to be doing a lot of mystery because I'm leading this crime fiction genre study, so I'm really into that right now.
When you book talk books, people ask you, do you like this book?
Yeah, sure.
Is this your favorite? And sometimes I admit this is one of my favorite books of the year. But I avoid when people ask me, do you really like this book? To answer that question, because oftentimes I don't. This is not my thing, romance or something, cozy mystery or something. So I avoid it and I say, it's interesting, and then go into
the next book. Moving on. Well, what do you do with kids?
Oh no, I do that all the time.
Yeah, kids are tougher critics. What do you do with them?
I don't often get kids asking that question, actually. More of the time they come up with 2 and they're like, which one did you like better?
Oh, okay.
And that's hard to answer, especially if you like them both. And it's usually just, well, I like this one because of this, and I like this one because of this. And then hopefully they can, if they still can't make their mind, then I'm like, I'll take this one.
I often get asked about any horror book available, and I have not read all of them, contrary to what people think. So often I can either, if they say, did you like this one? Or maybe it's one I didn't like. And in my head, I'm like, well, did you really like this book? I'm like, here's what this author does really well. I try to put it back on that. Or here's what this book does really well. you know, if you're gonna get me on a book I love, like I got the entire book list staff talking about Nosferatu because they didn't read the real ending. But you know, when people ask me about like Dr. Sleep, I didn't like that as much. I didn't like it for a very specific reason. It turned into the ending is turned into an AA meeting. And it's like all very, if you're not into the whole Alcoholics Anonymous thing, the ending is kind of like, oh, really? That was for me. But I don't want to, that's personal. I know lots, so I'd be like, you know, they say, is it as good as The Shining? I'm like, there are things that are excellent about this book, and it has everything you want from Stephen King. And he also includes some personal things that he's gone through within the storyline, which people find very intriguing. And that's kind of how I do it. Even though if they ask me outright, I'll tell them Nosferatu is better. The son outdid the husband, or the father, but I'm careful with that. That's a minority opinion, so.
With students, I feel like I can opt to it. Maybe with adults you can't, but I can say, you know what, I don't really care for it all that much, but it is so popular, it is flying off the shelves, and kids are telling me that
I do
they
that
love it
too.
all the time. I don't know, I gotta imagine you can do that with adults, like,
We do that all the time.
it really wasn't my cup of tea because I don't really like blah, 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 but the reviews are fantastic. All my patrons are coming in and saying that they loved it, or.
Doesn't work in the stacks for me.
No, it doesn't work in the stacks.
In a one-on-one conversation in the stacks, if I cop to not liking it, they put it back.
Right.
Yeah, they're done.
They're
See,
done.
if I'm in the
Right.
stacks, I don't think I would lead anybody to something that I didn't like.
Well, no, that's not true. Because what if it's like my good example is romance. I don't read romance, but I am one of the best people at our library at helping romance readers, because I use I'm constantly use their enthusiasm for the genre that they like to help them. So I know books that lots of patrons have enjoyed in certain major subgenres. So if they tell me that they really like realistic contemporary romance, they like contemporary romance, I know shelves I can take them to for authors. And I have at least read a book by some of these authors, or at least sped read them. So I know what to talk about. And if they'll say, well, did you like this book? I'll be like, you know, this author, I'm not a big romance reader, but this author is super popular with contemporary romance fans. Like, I have a great example. Like, I finally read Lisa Kleypas. Is that how you say her name? Kleypas? Yeah, and it was fine. It was fine. I get why people like it. And I wrote a review about it, about the best, selling it to the best reader. And I know tons of people who would love her. And I give I give them out all the time, or authors. I'll be, do you like her? They'll be like, yes. And then I know what frame I'm in, and I've read one, and I get the sense of it. And so I can be like, oh, this is a great example of what this kind of book is. So if you like this author, you'll like this author. So yeah, they just walk away.
Right,
Yeah.
so I try and answer it in some other way, but that's really good. This is what's great about, that's a good answer to that.
And
When adults ask that question, did you like this, or which one's your favorite, that's like the last question they want you to just justify them taking it. They don't really want an answer from you. They don't want a yes or no answer. What they want you to what they want to hear you say is, you know what? You will like blah blah about this book. They just need one more push to take it. They don't want to, yes or no is actually a bad answer to that question, because that's not what they're after. They just want you to validate that yes, they want to take it home. They need you to push them.
They're on the edge. They need to
Yep,
be pushed
they're on
over.
the edge. They want you to push them to circulation.
I call myself a book pusher sometimes. One of my patrons labeled me that. She said, "Oh no, it's the book pusher. I don't need books." She comes in.
Call me that
Yeah.
last week.
She's like, "I thought you were off today. Thought you were at a meeting." I'm like, "I won't give you any book suggestions, but I did read a book. I think I read a review that I think you'd like the book." But yes, book pusher. So.
And I would just throw this out there for
There's a lot of
anybody
drug
who
references in this
deals
talk.
with mysteries. Read the ending.
Yeah.
Even if you don't, I mean, if you're gonna read a part of the book, read the ending. I can't tell you how many times, because I am compelled to read the entire book. I have a problem reading 30 pages, 50 pages. Unless I absolutely hate it, I read the entire book. And there have been times where I myself loved the book, was I'm vested, it's great, and I get to the end and I go, I cannot believe this is where you took this book. And then that, I know certain readers are gonna be with me. They're gonna be like, that was completely implausible, there's no way you possibly could have known
Mysteries,
that.
that's key.
And if you're a mystery reader, if you want the red herrings, but you want the clues so you could possibly figure it out, at least most mystery readers.
So there's that famous Sue Grafton book. Which one was it? It was It was before T. Maybe it was. There was one where the ending wasn't resolved because it's a mystery. People want it's Sue Grafton. They want a resolved ending, and we didn't get a chance to read it because it's Sue Grafton, and we have like 50 people on automatic hold, and we just know, okay, you're good. There's a new Sue Grafton. Here's our read alike list while you wait. And they came in person after person after person, angry. So we're like, okay, before we put this on hold, and the ending was really kind of open, like they rode off in a car. I can't remember exactly because there's been a lot since then, but people were angry. And I think it might have been S, because I remember T was like her big return to being really good again. But people were upset, and we heard about it. So it's good to know.
That's just one thing I'd say. If mysteries, like you said, they want the conclusion.
Yeah, make sure you know that it's a solid mystery, and a mystery has a good ending. It has a plausible ending.
And a romance has a happy ending.
Yes, if it does not have a happy ending, it is not a romance. You talked to Rebecca about those. And in that case, those are different readers.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, if the groom dies at the wedding, then it might be a horror book, too. So. Nicholas Sparks is not a romance, right? I know. Those are different readers, yes. Yes, don't bring Nicholas Sparks to your romance book talk. Oh, please no.
All right. Anything else to chat about, or should we wrap it up? All right. Well, I would like to just give a big round of applause to Katie and Melanie. And thank you all for attending. Really appreciate it. I've been chatting with some of the live stream folks, and I've been taking some notes. Hopefully, you are all familiar with the Corner Shelf newsletter that we do at Booklist. Oh, good, I see nods. That's awesome. Corner Shelf is a newsletter that I run on Booklist that comes out 8 times a year via email. And it's free. It's a newsletter all about readers advisory and collection development topics. And our next issue is coming out in the middle of October, where I will do a feature column on this program, and we'll have some of the notes from the presenters. I've been copying down some of the stuff that we chatted about here, and I'll also include a link to the video recording of this. So if you're interested in that, please go to booklistonline.com, click newsletters, and you can find out how to sign up for that there, and then you'll get all this information afterwards. So that about wraps it up. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you.